Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, my international friends, gather around the virtual water cooler with us as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, all the good entertainment stuff. And by the way, everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. It is Christmas week. It is my favorite time of year. And but we are here still to talk about the things that we love. And joining us, looking rather festive today, is one Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, sir?
Ho, ho, ho. Now I have a machine gun. I'm so festive today, John, but I want to remind everyone that Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut is my favorite Christmas movie, if you know what I'm saying.
I still can't believe you can qualify that as a Christmas movie.
It's such a Christmas. The whole thing is about going into realms. The magical Christmas trees are the place that Tom Cruise has to get into the entire movie.
I see what you're saying. Well, listen, guys. We've got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about here today, and then we're going to go on the second half of the show and take your live questions. How do you get in a live question here on the John Campea Show? Two different ways. Number one, use the tip link. You can see the tip link in the top of the description of this video. You can use that link 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime, and we'll get around to your question on the very next show, so you can do that. Or you can use the YouTube super chat way. You can do that, and then we'll get to your questions just a little bit later. But before we get on to that, let's go to our main topics of the day, everybody. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by simply going anytime, 24 hours a day, to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. When you get there, fill out the form that you find there with your topic or question, hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your topic or question featured here as one of the main topics on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get on to our first main topic today. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Sean Bailey, who writes, Cats was DOA at the box office this weekend, opening well below its initial projections. It's a shame, as there were some very talented people involved on both sides of the camera, and the studio put a lot of money into it. I'm hearing around $100 million. That's not counting, by the way, marketing. That's not counting marketing. When movies bomb on this scale, how does it affect the cast and the filmmakers? Whose career is most impacted? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, Cats did not do well. And okay, set aside for a second the fact that it cost $100 million to make. Even if this was like a Joker movie that, cost $40 million to make, and when it opens to only $6.5 million, that ain't good. That's not good, Rob. I mean, I know different people can have different definitions of good, but I don't care what definition of good you have. This is not good. And it's a little bit heartbreaking to me because this movie's directed by Tom Hooper, who I love. This guy is a great director. And I've been sure that even though the trailers look bad, I was sure that Tom Hooper, the guy who made King's Speech, the guy who made Hugh Jackman's Les Mis, that this uber-talented Academy Award-nominated director would deliver something really good of the most decorated musical stage play of all time. And apparently, it's a total disaster. It's apparently a total disaster, Rob. So, what happens when a movie loses this much money? What happens when you get a flop on something this level, Rob? I think there's a couple things to look at. Number one, I don't think, Rob, that this is going to affect any of the actors. I really don't. I don't think no one's going to look at this and go, "Oh, Idris Elba movies flop," or they're going to look at it and say, "Oh, you can't put Academy Award winner Jennifer Hudson in a movie," or you can't. "Oh, Ian McKellen, you can't." I don't think this is going to affect them, and I don't even think it's going to have that big of an effect on Tom Hooper, because his rep is pretty, bulletproof. And doing something like Cats, I think everybody knew he was really swinging for the fences, doing something very audacious. He was trying something outlandish, and clearly it didn't work. Is it going to be a smear on his rep? A little bit, yeah, but I don't think all that much. If anything, Rob, I think the main casualty, if you will, of this Cats fiasco is going to be future film projects that try to do something different. I think that's going to hurt it. I think it really is. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but I think the next time some filmmaker comes to a studio with this idea of, hey, listen, we're going to do this thing. It's never been done before. It's really outside of the box. I think it's going to cause studio execs to go, yeah, but they just tried to do that with Cats and they lost their shirts on it. So yeah, I don't see it personally, Rob. I don't see it affecting the actors. I think it'll be a little bit of a smudge on Tom Hooper's rep, but not terribly too much. I think really more it's going to be the idea of really pushing boundaries is going to make people take pause, make studios take pause. I don't know. How do you see this?
Well, I wouldn't want to be Taylor Swift today, John. Let's just say that. No, first of all, I think people need to understand that making a film requires hundreds of people. And making a film like Cats, if nothing else, they were swinging for the fences.
Absolutely.
Now, we 2 hours of your time or 90 minutes of your time, sometimes you can watch an Italian Star Wars ripoff like Star Crash, as I do, and love it. And know it's kind of a ramshackle movie that no one is going to say is the greatest movie in the world. Cats was made, from what I've heard, in excess of $200 million was the budget. And you had people training for months and new technologies and things that they tried that they never had done before. And everybody gave it their all, to the point, John, that Tom Hooper was fixing visual effects after the movie was in the theaters.
Yeah.
And Judi Dench's human hand was seen in one scene that many reviewers pointed out, and they went and fixed that. And I think everybody who works on a film is crushed by this. Because you don't work on a film and half-ass it. Judi Dench doesn't show up and go, I'm just going to act a little good today. Not very good. Not really good. Just a little good. People don't do that. When they work on movies, everybody's bringing their A game. They work their asses off. They're trying to make the best movies they can. And that's true of just about everyone. Maybe not Bruce Willis in a few of his movies lately, but everybody's trying to bust their asses. And I think, especially, I'm sure everybody thought this was going to be a hit because it was so wacky.
Yeah, and they're trying something.
They're trying something new, and I think everybody walks away crushed. Not as much as the studio accountants do, but definitely everybody who was involved in this film. I think Tom Hooper is going to drink himself into oblivion this Christmas Eve, and rightfully so. Did I say Tom Hooper?
Yeah.
I can't imagine what he's going through. He
And
put
it's
his
funny
heart and soul into this, dude.
It's funny that you mentioned the thing is that this film is doing what very few, if any, films have ever done. They're actually, it's like a video game. They're putting out a patch for it. They're putting out, they've put up, if you guys can see beside me here, they've put out a patch to try to update and improve the visual effects. But listen, at the end of the day, like we're audiences, we are an audience, Rob, that will watch CW shows, and their visual effects are terrible. But we get by them if we're enjoying the fun story and we enjoy if we enjoy the characters and we enjoy the story, we give it a pass. I think if Cats, and again, I'm speaking from a position that I did not watch it, because even though I was really looking forward to this movie, it broke my heart to hear how bad it was. And I just, especially being around Christmas time, I've got other things to do with my time, like watching The Witcher, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But it is really unfortunate because, hearing some studio people, they really did think the audience was going to love this. They really did. And when you get something that is so bold and so different, it's really hard to tell whether the audience is going to eat it up and love it or absolutely hate it. And sometimes, Rob, when you do something so radically different, there's a thin line between the audience detesting it and the audience saying is the most revolutionary thing. And we applaud them for trying something big, but I think you're right. I think Tom Hooper's, breaking out the Captain Morgan.
But dude, even from the trailers, some things, I mean, this is the kind of movie that they should have done a test. They should have done a test and seen, like, I mean, they probably did. And I guess everyone said, well, it could be cool. It could be, you certainly had an all-star cast. I'm sure the musical numbers are great. I haven't seen it. And Chris Carr would say it failed because there was no buttholes. But I just think that ultimately, perhaps, as was evidenced by everyone's reaction to that first trailer, that this movie was just a little too weird. I mean, it's a little too hard to take, I think. And I don't know why that is. I think this movie, if nothing else, will be puzzled over for years to come about why did it not work. And maybe it's because, as I like to say, I'm always talking about verisimilitude. Maybe it's complete lack of verisimilitude. I mean, Cats, like Idris Elba's character, he's wearing clothes. Some cats aren't wearing clothes. Some cats have shoes.
Now, I
Some
did not
cats
see
don't.
the original musical. Did they not do that in the original musical?
You know, the original musical, I did see the original musical when I was little. And I remember they had, but because it was on stage and it was so stylized, it kind of worked. You didn't expect a kind of realism, but they're going for this CGI realism, sort of, kind of. So it's sort of weird. I mean, even I think that's why people responded to it the way they did after that first trailer. They're like, what is this? You know, it's not like a stylized rendition of something. They're trying to create CG cat people that weren't cat people, really.
They're using CG to make it look like the live stage play that had people in costume. It's a weird logical loop there, sort of thing.
It's bizarre. I mean, I get where they're coming from. I understand why they tried to do it, but I think the actual presentation it asked too much of the audience. It went too far.
And again, it's hard for me to say because I didn't see it yet. So there could be a million other things, and I don't know if I'm going to see it. Anyway, question is, guys, when you see a movie like this flop as hard as it just did, who do you think gets most affected in this particular situation? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, with that down, let's move on to our second main topic today. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Sean M., who writes, "Hey, John. As expected, The Rise of Skywalker opened huge to $176 million, which exceeded the $160 million Disney forecasted. However, it's less than The Last Jedi's $220 million. How should it be looked at?" All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man, and saying that in. And yeah, so Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker has now come out. It's open in theaters. We did our big spoiler review yesterday. You guys know I didn't like the film. I think there's a lot going for it. I think it's got some definite positives. I understand why a lot of people like it, and that's awesome. I celebrate that. But unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. That aside, the movie comes out and makes $176 million, making it one of the largest opening weekends in cinematic history. Currently, it sits at number 12 of the all-time list of biggest opening weekends ever. What also needs to be pointed out, though, is that this is the lowest opening of the new Star Wars trilogy. To be fair, that just follows the pattern of what the other Star Wars trilogies have done. Every other Star Wars trilogy so far has had the first film open the biggest, the second film open less, and the third film open less. So we can go into and debate what that's all about. So the question here becomes, is a $176 million opening one of the biggest of all time, but the smallest for this for this particular trilogy? Should that be looked as a positive or a negative? Now, Rob and I have different opinions on this, and I'm going to give you mine and give him the second word, the last word on this. To me, as somebody who did not like this movie, there's no way you can look at this as negative. You just cannot look at this as a negative. I mean, this is a film. When you open any film, I don't care what title put on. If you are being fair and you are trying to be as objective as possible, now we're talking subjective art, we can just debate the quality of the movie, but is a $176 million thing a good opening? I think if you're trying to be fair and balanced and take prejudice out of it and just look at a movie came out that had this X budget and it made this amount of money at the box office, you got to ask yourself the question, should that be considered a success? $176 million opening weekend, granted for a movie that I didn't like, but still, that opens to a $176 million opening, one of the biggest opening weekends of all time. There is no way to be fair and objective and taking pre-existing biases out of it that you could possibly look at this. Although we're going to go to a poll here in a second, and clearly some of you do look at it the other way. But I'm just saying, from my point of view, there's no way to look at that as a failure. A step down from the previous one? Absolutely it was. Yes. Is it the greatest opening of all time? No. But it is a positive, great, solid opening that most filmmakers and most studios would kill to have a film open to $176 million. Absolutely they would. Absolutely. And so I want to propose why, if you honestly put baggage aside and pre-existing biases aside and just look at it for what it is, you have to come to the conclusion, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have to come to the conclusion that this is a positive outcome, a great outcome, a money-making outcome, this is a huge win for them. I think this is a huge win for them. Despite how I feel about the film personally, this is a huge win. But Rob, I know that you have a different opinion on this and a different perspective on this. You think this should be looked at more negatively, and I give you the floor. Why do you think that this should be looked at more negatively?
First of all, as you pointed out, this followed a pattern of Star Wars movies. You know, the I guess the law of diminishing returns in terms of opening. Now, I think that this, as far as Star Wars is concerned, and you know, you only have to go back and look at what Disney has been doing with the MCU, what Marvel has been doing with the MCU. How the careful planning, the way that they've created their storytelling, the way that the world was anticipating Endgame, you know, Star Wars fandom has completely changed. It's really, there's a lot of divisiveness, as we always talked about. But this film was not just a lesser opening, it was a substantially reduced opening from both Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And I can't help but think that this is seen as a disappointment. And as you pointed out, it is correct. Any filmmaker worth their salt would love to have an opening at $175 million or whatever the actuals turn out to be tomorrow or whatever. Absolutely. But this is a Star Wars movie that has apparently opened to almost 50 million less than Last Jedi opened. And that, for this finale, which, by the way, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at. I mean, they certainly didn't spare any expense making this movie. And I'll bet you, with the reshoots, I bet this movie cost a lot more money than Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. I don't know.
They're saying it actually cost a little bit less than The Last Jedi.
See, I can't believe that.
Oh, I do. Oh, absolutely, I do.
But maybe it did. But I still think it has to be seen as a disappointment because it's a substantial fall from the previous film. And that to me is, I think it's indicative of where they're going. I mean, it shouldn't have been like this. This movie should have ended on a gigantic... People should have been anticipating this movie the way they anticipated Endgame, which is another film, you know, that came out this year from the same studio. And I think, look, there's a lot of people that are going to talk about the mismanagement of Star Wars, and I don't think that's the case. I think this really just comes down to, what have we learned? We have learned from this Star Wars trilogy that it's always better, and I've said on my own show that there's no way they could have made 3 movies or planned for 3 movies all at once, because honestly, John, even though it seems crazy, they didn't know how Star Wars was going to do. They didn't. It was not a foregone conclusion that Star Wars was going to be masterful when Disney bought it. They just didn't know. So they didn't plan out a trilogy because they had to make sure they weren't going to throw good money good money after bad. So they had to see if it worked. But once they knew that Force Awakens worked, they really needed to sit down and say, okay, we need to craft an overarching story. We know we're going to make these 2 movies. Let's work in tandem. Let's make it happen. I know directors came and went and things like that, but I think this box office is really indicative of how they went about making these films.
Okay, I'll tell you why I disagree. Because I think you have to purposefully cherry pick out one unique perspective to make it look like this is negative. If you look by
I don't think it's negative.
I think if you look at any metric, by any unit of measurement that you look at this situation, $176 million opening, one of the biggest opening weekends in the history of the cinematic art form. By the way, if you take out the other films in the trilogy, even accounting for inflation, this would be the largest opening weekend of any Star Wars movie in history. There's 1,000 different ways you can look at this that say, clearly this is positive. I think you have to go out of your way to find a way to look at this in such a way that it's a negative. And I agree with the diminishing things. When you don't want to see any film franchise that's going this in its trajectory, right? You don't. But if the bottom point of that trajectory here is still a massive, huge box office hit, then you're still doing good. Like, a hit is a hit is a hit.
That's true.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think, yes, if you want to find one unique way to look at it to make it seem negative, you can. But I think if you're going to stand back and say, well, let's take all the perspectives into account, I think overwhelmingly it comes out in the favor of. You got to look again, and this is a movie I don't like, but I don't think there's any way you can look at this other than a huge win and a positive.
Let me ask you, what if this movie doesn't hit $1 billion?
Well, does it not hit $1 billion? I need some more specific. Does it not hit $1 billion as it makes $980 million?
Well, I mean, let's just
that
say
is still a big hit.
It is still a big hit, but I think you can't. You also have to take into consideration. You have to look at this holistically as far as this Star Wars franchise goes. Like, look, when Star Trek V came out in 1989, it didn't do well. And it was considered monetarily compared to the other movies. And it was considered to be a disappointment within the Star Trek franchise. To this day, it's still probably the least successful, with maybe the exception of Nemesis. But in terms of the expectations and what they spent on it. And it is seen as a movie that is not as well liked as probably the other Star Trek movies. And it's looked at in terms of the franchise as a disappointment. Now, I think that this movie, financially, if it doesn't hit $1 billion, and even Last Jedi made, 1.2 or something like that, if this makes, you can still say yes. Even if it made $800 million, and that's all it made, it would still be considered a hit movie. But I think it would be always looked upon as a disappointment within the Star Wars franchise, the same way that Solo is.
See, I think, well, yeah, but Solo's a movie that made like $400 million, not
right.
And I think if this thing comes out, say, like Batman versus Superman, or Justice League, let's say, makes in like the mid 600s, yeah. I mean, the opening weekend, I still think you look at as a huge win. But if it ultimately ends up at $650 million, like, say, a Justice League did, then you got to look at that as a disappointment. Breaking even is not what a Star Wars movie is supposed to do. It's supposed to make them hundreds of $millions of profit.
Right.
If it gets into 850, 900 millions, I still think it's going to cross the $1 billion mark. Don't know that, but that's my guess. Then, and I've been predicting all along, I don't think it was, I've always said I didn't think this movie was going to make as much as The Last Jedi. I mean, it could. I didn't say it was impossible, but I thought it was going to somewhere in between. But listen, guys, the important thing is here, I wanted to know what you guys thought. Understanding that, on the one hand, one of the biggest opening weekends ever. On the other hand, significantly the lowest opening of the new trilogy. Should this be looked at positively or negatively? And I put that question to you guys, and we made that the topic of today's question of the day. And I put this up on Twitter just before we started the show. Question of the day, simply: The Rise of Skywalker has one of the biggest opening weekends in cinematic history, currently sitting at number 12 with the $176 million opening. But it is also the lowest opening of the new trilogy. Should $176 million be viewed as a positive or negative thing? Right now, a little over 3,700 of you guys have cast your votes so far. 58.1% of you are saying this needs to be looked at positively. 41.9% of you are saying it needs to be looked at negatively. I'll be honest with you. I thought more people would say positive. I really did. So positive's in the lead, but I thought the positive thing would be much higher. So 58.1% are saying it's positive. 41.9% are saying it's a negative. How do you guys look at this opening for The Rise of Skywalker? Now, I'm going to ask you guys, when you jump into the comment section to offer your opinion, take your personal bias of what you thought about the movie out of the equation. I had to do that because I don't like the movie. So I had to take my personal bias of the fact that I didn't like the movie out of the equation. Do you think it's a success? And maybe you love the movie. Take that out of it too. Don't say it's a positive result just because you like the movie. What do you guys think about this? So how should it be looked at? Generally positively, generally negatively? What do you guys think? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's move on to our third main topic today. And our third main topic today gets sent in to us by Greg Teller, who writes, "Greetings, everyone. I watched all of the first season of The Witcher this weekend and absolutely loved it. I wanted to know if you guys had a chance to watch it, and if so, what did you think about it? I thought Henry Cavill was awesome." All right, thanks for sending that in, man. And Rob, I did too.
You watched all of it?
I watched all of it. I thought I was going to try to get through a couple of episodes. But what happened was Saturday night, Ann was out of town with family. And so I found myself, like, I could go out hang with my buddy, but I think I'm going to chill out, hang out at home for the evening. I'm going to pop in an episode of The Witcher. I'm going to catch up on some of the football games that were on earlier. I'm just going to chill out and relax. Well, I was up till 2 a.m. watching Witcher. I got up to episode 7, and then the very next morning I got up early to watch the final episode of The Witcher. And I will tell you what, guys, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. By the way, what do you think about Ray improved the Witcher poster? Just so you can see, Ray improved the poster.
Dude, you should be I look at that picture, you should be every action star in every movie. I want to see Ray should do a pantheon of posters of just you as every Mad Max, Maximus, and Gladiator, Braveheart, William Wallace, Ramius from Hunt for Red October. I want to see the John Campea as every action star
Ray's
ever.
got a talent. Ray's got a talent.
That is such a cool image.
He did a great job. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers away about Witcher, but
he painted that.
I will say this. As the show progressed, and for those of you who watch the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Again, give no spoilers away. As the show opened and progressed, I thought this is really interesting. This is really cool. I like this story. I love Henry Cavill as Geralt. I thought he did wonderful, all this kind of stuff. But then, as you get into the deeper episodes, they start to reveal some things that you're like, wait a minute, what? That totally, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, fundamentally changed the way you see all the things that came before it. And then the next episode, they do it again. And it's like, I'll tell you, Rob, this is not a perfect show. This is what I wrote on Twitter. On Twitter, let me bring up specifically what I wrote just to make sure I get it right here. Okay, this is what I wrote. I want to bring this up. I wrote this on Twitter. I said, just finished The Witcher Season 1, and it is by no means a perfect show, but the intricacies of its narrative and the pacing of what they reveal to the audience is some really high-level storytelling, and I am absolutely fascinated by this show. So I put that up on Twitter the other day, and it's absolutely true. I am fascinated by this show. And the way, and like I said in it, I was floored by high-level storytelling. This would have been something very difficult to really map out properly for how it plays on screen. And they did it in such a way that I thought it was great, and I thought it was wonderful, and I ate it up. And my one complaint, Rob, is that it ended. That's my one complaint.
That's how I felt about The Expanse Season 4.
I'm by the way, I've started watching. I'm one episode into The Expanse Season 4, but the season ends, and no secret, I'm not a big fan of 8-episode seasons. I don't think that's enough. I really don't. I do not think 8-episode seasons. You got to go 10, 12 minimum, I think. But whatever. So it ends on this moment that I'm like, no, there has to be one more secret episode somewhere that I can watch. Again, look, I'm not surprised Henry Cavill was great in it because he's Henry Cavill, and I think he's fantastic. But he was marvelous. I'll tell you what, though, the rest of the cast was great. I was particularly fond of, I can't remember the actress's name, but the girl who plays Yennefer in it. I was as taken. There are some people complaining a little bit that maybe they spent too much time in the show on the Yennefer character. But to me, I was as invested in the Yennefer character storyline as I was in Geralt's storyline. I was absolutely loving it, and then their stories would intertwine, and then their stories would separate, and then the stories would intertwine, and I was lapping it up. I was absolutely lapping it up. I didn't know what to expect from this show, Rob. You know, the first trailer came out, and I was like, it feels small. Then the second trailer came out, and I'm like, okay, this looks good. And that's all I was hoping for Witcher Season 1. Just good. Just give me something good. I loved it. I'm not going to say that I love it on the same level as The Boys, or I love it on the same level as the Umbrella Academy. I'm not necessarily going to say that, but I liked it a lot more than I even thought I was going to. And a lot of that credit goes to obviously the showrunners and everything, but Henry Cavill carries this show on his incredibly broad shoulders and incredibly chiseled jaw. He just does a great, great job, and I just adored it. Now, I don't know that you've even had a chance to start watching it yet.
I did.
You did start watching it. What episode are you up to?
I just watched the first episode.
All right, so where are you at right now on it? So what are you thinking about
First of all, it's beautifully made. You know, the production values are great. Cavill's a really compelling presence. To be honest, the first episode, you know, I played Witcher 3, the video game.
Right.
But I'm not, which I thought it's a great game. but I don't know much about the lore. I certainly haven't read the books, and I thought the show started out a little slow, but I was intrigued. I'm like, I will watch it.
Wait till you get into the later episodes,
Yeah,
and you just remember everything that happens in the first episode, because I'm going to tell you what, it gets expanded upon.
Right. But I was like, this is really intriguing. What I think is most interesting about what we've received, and The Witcher being the capper to a great year of television in a fantasy context. Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, Carnival Row, his Dark Materials, now Witcher. You're seeing, John. We always talk about we live in this amazing age. When I'm watching Witcher, I'm like, okay. People were talking about, well, we need a replacement for Game of Thrones, and before the Lord of the Rings show starts. But the fact that we're getting, would you call this? I know it's based on novels, but as far as a video game, too, the adaptation here, it's pretty stellar. And once again, Carnival Row wasn't perfect, and his Dark Materials was, up and down. And this, you love it. Well, I'll see what I think about it. But I'm amazed of the quality of fantasy television that we're getting. It blows me away, and the promise of things to come. And if you love this show, I wish it was more than 8 episodes. Now I'm bummed out because I'm tired of running out of these shows that I love. But it's amazing that we're getting this. It's incredible that these shows are getting made. I'm happy to support them because the vision is big. Obviously Game of Thrones was in the back of their minds the whole time they were making this. They're like, we've got to have this kind of production value. Everybody knows what they're going to watch. They're like, this is what we expect. It's not like the days of Hercules and Xena anymore. Right. We have passed a Rubicon. And from that perspective, I'm like, I'm locked in. I got to finish The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Witcher. Maybe I'll watch one episode after the other and skip through the shows.
Yeah, I got to get back on Expanse because I watched episode 1, so I got to get into the rest of that. So, question here is, guys, listen, I highly recommend, if you've not started watching Witcher, I highly recommend, and just hold on tight as you get into the later episodes, because it's again, the phrase I keep coming back to in my head, Rob, about this show, especially as you get into later episodes, is high level storytelling. Like really high level, sophisticated storytelling brought into a genre like this, which I think is great. If you guys have watched the show, what did you think about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's move on to our fourth and final main topic today. And we're going to stick on the topic of The Witcher here, Rob. We're going to stick on the topic of The Witcher, as this next question is sent in to us from Robert Dean, who writes, "Hi, John and crew. Entertainment Weekly's review of The Witcher is very unprofessional, and I'm pleased to see tons of people ripping them for it. They've even admitted to skipping some of the episodes. Disliking a show is fine, but shouldn't we expect fairness and professionalism from paid critics?" All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And what Robert Dean is referring to is that Entertainment Weekly, one of the very solid, really good trades out there, Entertainment Weekly, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, on and on. There's a number of really good, reliable, top shelf trades, and Entertainment Weekly is one of them. Doesn't mean I always agree, not at all. It doesn't mean I always agree with what they do. Doesn't mean they don't sometimes make mistakes. They do, but they're one of the high level trades, and I enjoy Entertainment Weekly very, very much. That said, Entertainment Weekly's Darren Franich and Kristen Baldwin decided they were going to review the show. And their review of the show was not kind. Was not kind at all. It is nakedly terrible. They give it a rating of an F and all this kind of stuff, which, let's be clear, is perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong. Like when I first started seeing that people were upset at Entertainment Weekly, I'm like, come on, guys. So somebody watched something and they didn't like something that you liked. That's entertainment. That's art. Give it a rest. It's okay. Like, just quit getting your knickers in a twist. Let it go. But then I started looking more into it. And as you started to get into it, and you read down through the article, you start to realize they didn't even watch the show. They didn't even watch half of the episodes of the show. This is one of the comments in particular. This is from the Entertainment Weekly article. "Because life's too short for Netflix drama running times, I skipped ahead to the 5th episode." This is after watching episode 2. I skipped ahead to the 5th episode. Episode 5 also features magic, Viagra, and masked orgy set to some truly ridiculous retro softcore music, and then later in the article reveals that they didn't watch any more after episode 5. Let me make something really clear here. I am not upset because somebody didn't like a show that I like. That's perfectly fair and perfectly fine. I was getting ready to jump to this guy's defense. When I first heard about this, I was getting ready to jump to his defense. It's okay if somebody didn't like something we liked. It's all right. It's fine. Don't worry about it. This is why this upsets me, though, Rob. Here's why this upsets me. It is one thing for Eddie's Afternoon Movie Blog to want to write an article on, The Witcher, and they watched like 2 or 3 episodes and then kind of threw all the show under the buses. It's one thing for that. It's one thing for some loser fucking nobody YouTube channel like me to say, I'm a YouTube channel, whatever. I watched 5 episodes of The Expanse and I didn't like it. So I'm going to write a bad review of The Expanse. Still shouldn't do that. I still shouldn't do that. This is Entertainment fucking Weekly. Now listen, there is a place in fandom and in the entertainment community for outlets like mine, for YouTube channels and blogs and podcasts from a fan's perspective and blah, blah. There is a home and a place for that in the entertainment world. And I'm very happy with our place in it. That being said, there's another we also need, on top of this stuff, we also need the higher level stuff that we can go to and count on, like the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and Entertainment Weekly and Deadline and whatever. There's a place for that stuff as well, and we need that stuff. And I can only speak for myself. But when an outlet like Entertainment Weekly allows one of their writers, and by the way, I don't know Darren Franich. I don't know him. For all I know, wonderful, salt of the earth guy. For all I know, he's one of the greatest guys in the world, does lots of charity work, whatever. Maybe all of his other stuff is very, very fair. So I'm not trying to paint this individual in any sort of negative light in his totality. I'm just talking about this one isolated incident. But this one isolated incident to me is radically concerning because it does a couple of things. If you're Entertainment Weekly and you're putting out a review for a show, and you don't even bother watching half of the episodes of the show, and yet choose to come out and give it a negative review anyway, you are giving a major disservice to the fans, you're giving a major disservice to the showrunners, and you are doing a major disservice to the industry as a whole. Because your place is on that shelf of Entertainment Weekly, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline. You're supposed to be one of the fucking pillars that we can go to and turn to outside of our regular fan level stuff. You're supposed to be that. And in an era, Rob, where we have a lot of people, we have people today that talk, critics don't even care, and critics will. I'm like, yes, we do. Critics do. Then you get a situation like this, where Entertainment Weekly and this particular critic are justifying all the negative things said about the practice of film criticism in general, and you just play into those negative stereotypes. It makes everybody look bad, not only on that particular level with Entertainment Weekly and Hollywood Reporter and whatnot, it makes everybody under it look bad too. It makes us all look stupid. And we do enough to make ourselves look stupid, thank you very much, that we don't need you doing it for the rest of us. And I'll tell you what, it was infuriating. Again, this cannot be emphasized enough. I have no problem with an article like this coming out and giving a negative review to something that I liked. That's okay. That's art. That's the subjectivity of it. No problem. But for you to be Entertainment Weekly, one of these pillars, and you come out and you give a review to something that we then later find out you didn't even watch half of it. There's something wrong with that. Now, listen, I'm not going to overreact. Some might say, too late, Campea, but I'm not going to overreact here and say, fire this guy. Hey, look, for all I know, this is the first mistake he's made. I don't have to agree with his opinion. I'm not doing that. But I am saying, keep a fucking eye on this. Don't let this happen again. listen, if you watch 3 episodes of The Witcher and you decide I can't watch anymore, fine. Either don't watch it or title your article, instead of titling your article, Netflix's The Witcher is nakedly terrible when you didn't even see half of it, title it, after 2 episodes of The Witcher, I couldn't watch anymore. That would at least qualify it and be honest and whatever in the headline. And so either don't review it at all or be specific about what it is you reviewed. But anyway, this to me I found infuriating because I think it undermines the fan community. I think it undermines and devalues the work that the showrunners did. And I think it undermines and makes Entertainment Weekly look bad. And then I think it makes everybody in the space look bad. I think it makes everybody in the space look bad. And that is something Entertainment Weekly needs to address. I'm not saying fire this guy. For all I know, he's a wonderful guy. Maybe he's never made a mistake like this again, and maybe he never will. So let's cut him a little bit of slack. But what I'm saying is his bosses need to sit down and have a conversation with this dude and say, look, you are a paid writer for Entertainment Weekly. We pay you to review shit. This ain't some little YouTube channel. This ain't some little podcast. This ain't some little blog. If we're fucking paying you to review something, you sit your ass down and you watch the damn thing before you give whatever your honest opinion on it is. Is that too much to ask? Because I'll tell you what, I'm a piddly little fucking nobody YouTube channel. If I was paying you, Rob, to say, hey man, I really need a review of The Expanse Season 4 for our channel, for our viewers, for our community. And then I paid you to go and watch that and then do a review. And you did a review. And then later I found out you just watched 3 episodes of it before doing it. You and me are going to have a problem. As I'm sure my audience would have a problem with me. But anyway, Rob, so that's just kind of my perspective and my point of view on that. You see this whole situation. How am I I'm probably overreacting this, but what do you think about all this?
Well, I think what's happening in our pundit space and in the world of reviewing in general is that the reviewers somehow seem to think that they're more important than whatever it is that they're reviewing. Now, I would say in our space, John, in the YouTube online pundit space, we are, because people tune in to see us and hear our opinions. So it's not like they're tuning into Entertainment Weekly. But when you tune into Entertainment Weekly or read their website, it's Entertainment Weekly that you're turning into. You're not tuning into necessarily a specific reviewer. You're turning into you're logging into a place of note that is supposed to have an pretty objective view over the entertainment business. Obviously, reviewing is subjective, but a pretty good overview. So when you read something about Witcher, you expect, because you've come to expect over years, that you're going to have those reviewers give whatever it is that they're reviewing a fair shake. And a Netflix show, they didn't just say episode 1 of Netflix The Witcher.
Right.
They said Netflix The Witcher is nakedly terrible, or whatever they said, which leads you to believe as a consumer, as somebody that has gone to Entertainment Weekly in the past because I've liked their reviews, I figured I'll get their reviews have not steered me wrong. Well, these people are doing a tremendous disservice to their audience. They're betraying the audience trust by doing a review like this, because it shows we're not taking it seriously, so why should you? Well, I take a genre program seriously. It doesn't matter what it is. I tune into it and I want to watch it, and I'm going to make, as an astute viewer of genre entertainment, whether it's fantasy, science fiction, horror, thriller, whatever. I pride myself on my knowledge, and I wouldn't sit down and go write some review about something being terrible if I haven't had a holistic understanding of what it is. And like you just explained to me on this show, that, wow, after the first episode, wait till you see how it pays off further down the series. And it's like, if you haven't done your homework, why then are you writing a review like this? You're not more important. Reviewers are not more important than what they're reviewing. I would say it's different for us, John, because we're personalities who are also selling ourselves. We have our catchphrases and we have our funny things that we say that people like. But we also are very understanding and self-deprecating. We understand what we're doing when we're reviewing. But Entertainment Weekly is not that. It's not a personality. It's a place where people are going for legit reviews. And for them to do this, it really undermines their credibility. And I find it where can we go, John? Where can we go for these reviews that we can trust, or that at least we can use to guide us as to whether or not we should go experience these things or not. And I think it was really, I didn't like the snarky attitude about this and the way they played it off. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that worked long and hard to make this show, and Netflix put up the money for this show, and give it a fair shake. Give what people do a fair shake. Like you said, if they don't like it, great. Write a good review, but wait till you've seen the whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't expect them to write reviews that I agree with. I just expect them to have seen the content. And look, if your overall opinion of it is horrendously awful and you write it that way, all fair.
Right.
Even if it's something that I like,
exactly.
That's all fair. I trust that you're going to give me your honest perspective on the quality of the show from your personal subjective position. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. It doesn't have to be the same opinion as me. That's all I ask. But I remember reading this and it's like, okay, so you skipped episodes, you went from 2 to 5 and then failed to watch it after that, and yet I don't know. Again, now I'm just repeating myself, but listen.
But they're not phoning it in. Like, you can tell from the first episode that there was a lot of thought and care and effort put into this show.
Yeah.
And that itself demands the respect of you as a reviewer, that before you're going to go spout off about it, if all the episodes are there, and they are, give the show and give your audience a fair shake.
I agree. So question here is, guys, what do you think about this situation? It obviously upsets me a little bit because of what it represents, but how do you think about it? Maybe you disagree with me and you have a different perspective on it, which is great. Jump down into the comment section below and let me know what it is that you guys think. All right, guys. With all that stuff down and out of the way, we're now going to move on to our live questions that you guys have been firing in. But before we get to those live questions, as we always do, we're going to take a short couple of minute break here, rest the vocal cords, stretch our legs, refill our drinks, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys will hang in there, be indulgent with us, we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Wait. right, and we are back. Thank you guys for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there. Let's now jump into it and start taking your live questions. And we're going to get things started off here with Ryan Lohner, who writes, someday I really want to see this scene in a movie. Someone tells a long, complicated flashback story, and then the first thing the person they're talking to says, how'd you know about the parts you weren't there for? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That happens a lot, Rob. Now that I think, that really does happen a lot in the movies.
Yep.
People are telling stories from perspective they weren't even there for. But I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know I see it in shows and movies all the time. So great observation, Ryan. Very good observation. All right, next up here, Koa 1708 writes, so in a few years, there will be more Star Wars episodic movies, right? Not relating to Skywalker, but new storylines. I always think episodic works better than standalone. This is a discussion that's been going on for a couple of years now, Koa. I believe so. I personally believe, I don't know if it's going to be 2022 or 24 or 26 or beyond, but I do believe, with a new set of characters, I do believe there will be a movie that is called Star Wars Episode 10. I really believe, because there's a marketing gold mine in there with that. So I got to believe there is. Rob, do you think there will be, or do you think they're just going to move on from it?
I do, because why not? Look, if they do that, I just want to see a great story well told with great characters and a great plot. But I think, why not? I mean, isn't Rey gonna have kids?
Maybe, but you don't have to. It doesn't even have to be about Rey.
Right. It does, but I do think that they're going to continue on somehow.
I agree. All right, next up, 50 Shades of Geek writes, I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get a bigger response from you over my comment about Mando sending Baby Yoda to the past. I don't even remember it, to be honest with you, the other day. But at least it led to Aaron discovering and hopefully watching Bill and Ted 2, which is all good for me. It was funny. You missed on the show the other day, Rob, that Aaron gave me a hard time about not remembering something from Bill and Ted 1. There was something I couldn't remember about the first movie. But then it came out that I said, well, I'm just not really looking forward to Bill and Ted 3. She said, you mean Bill and Ted 2? I said, no, there already is a Bill and Ted 2. She's like, what? It's like, but hey, to be fair, I think a lot of people forgot about Bill and Ted 2 because, let's face it, it's pretty forgettable. I don't know.
Isn't that when he plays Death?
Yes.
That's Bill Sadler. How can you forget Bill Sadler as Death?
It doesn't matter. It's still not a very good movie. Did you like that one? Did you like Bill and Ted 2?
It's not as good as the first one. I mean, come on. Who can forget Socrates?
Socrates.
But I liked it.
Socrates. All right. I always love the way he said that. All right. 50 Shades Geek also writes, that was just me testing out the new tip thing of yours. I wasn't sure it was going to work since Super Chats aren't available in Israel, which is where I live. Oh, well, thank you for using it, man. We appreciate you supporting the show, dude.
Yerushalayim Shel Zahav.
Can you say that again? Because that just sounded cool.
Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. Next year in Jerusalem.
Oh, I like it. All right. Next up. 50 Shades of Geek also writes, I used to hate DC, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings just because I loved Marvel, Star Wars, and Harry Potter. Yes, I was one of those idiots, but I've since grown out of that phase, and it was all thanks to you, Schnepp, Robert, and Harloff. Well, that's good, because, Rob, that's been a running theme for a couple years now about how, unfortunately, tribalism had entered its way into fandom, where it's like, if people started to define themselves by what they hated. Right. I'm a DC fan, so I define myself by the fact that I hate anything Marvel, or vice versa, right? And that, I think we're starting to see that change, thankfully. But it is one of the darkest, most awful, stupid way of looking at movie fandom.
Dude, when I was a little kid, I was a Justice League of America fan. I'm talking comic book fan. I collected the comic books, and like Sean Flaherty across the street and the other people that lived in my neighborhood were all Marvel, Avengers, and they all talked about the Silver Surfer. And I'm like, Silver Surfer? That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. Then, of course, I picked up an Avengers comic, and I'm like, why would I possibly deprive myself of this? Because I have my other comic book, I'm more loyal to that. I can read both. We have a world where I can enjoy both. And I learned that lesson when I was like 8.
Yeah.
And it's kept.
About 8 is the level of mentality you should have to be able to understand that you can love both.
They're so weird. It's so weird to me that why would you not do that? I don't not buy Justice League hot toys because I buy Avengers hot toys.
All right. Next up, 50 Shades also writes, 2 years ago, I started my own YouTube channel following your example, and I've since made a small but significant positive influence on some of my younger viewers, both in my country and around the world, which is why, no matter if you have 10 people watching you or 10,000 people watching you. I encourage more and more film fans to get involved in the online movie fandom, but with podcasts, with blogs, maybe with a YouTube channel. We should all be adding our voices to the conversation, because I believe there are more smart people than dumb people, and therefore the more smart people that get into the conversation, it drowns out the dumb. But seriously, honestly, I think more people need to add their voice, and good on you for doing that. 50 Shades also writes, the biggest highlight of the year for me, because we were talking about biggest highlights of the year the other day, Rob, and one of the greatest moments of my life was when Christian featured not one, but two of my videos on Collider Live, and now I get to personally thank you for being a huge positive influence in my life. Well, thank you for that thing, and I know Christian will probably be tickled by that as well if he were here today. And then 50 Shades also writes, hearing you say my quote-unquote name was amazing. Now I guess I need to start taking more night shifts at my job to afford the questions I have for you. Oh, don't send in too many. Don't send in questions just for the sake of it, though. Guess I'd better stop typing it back to work. All these tips are getting expensive. I have spoken. Well, listen, 50 Shades, seriously. Thank you for being a member of the community. Thank you for wanting to support the channel and support the content that you enjoy watching. We appreciate it here very, very much. Now, go and get back to work, because I don't want you to get fired for watching my show. You know, it's always amazed me, Rob, all the way back in the movie blog days when I used to run my website, The Movie Blog, how many people I would constantly hear from when I would do the podcast. How many people I hear from saying, I listen to your show at work. I'm like, I am personally responsible for a 5% drop in American worker productivity. But it is crazy how many people listen to the shows or watch the shows at work. It's always been amazing to me. All right. Next up, Willow writes, do you remember when you did the Batman versus Superman movie fight with Mark and Draco? Yes, I do. I am undefeated on movie fights, as it turns out. And you tried to throw in the towel during one of the rounds, and Mark was like, no, I'm not going down with you. No, so what I did was, at one point, I still remember this, Rob, the other guys, it was Dan Murrell and the guy from Epic Mealtime. And I forget his name. A fellow Canadian dude, though. This big burly guy with this big beard. Really fun. And I remember they raised a great point. And I was like, that's it. I got to agree with you guys. And I literally got up and walked to the other side of the table. I'm saying, I'm sorry, I agree with these guys on this. That was all done and fun. Went back over, still went on to win the movie fight. It's one of the big things. Dan Murrell beat me. Dan Murrell beat me in my own backyard on in a movie trivia thing. But then I beat Dan Murrell in his backyard on movie fights. At some point, Dan and I will have to have the rubber match there in some way, shape, or form.
Dude, I lost a Star Trek movie fight.
How did you lose a Star Trek movie fight?
It was, well, you know, people just don't understand my greatness.
There's your shirt. I want a t-shirt with a picture of Rob's face looking up to the heavens and the quote, people just don't understand my greatness. That's got to be a shirt. I want that. That is awesome.
It'll be my Schmodown shirt for my team, the Burning Droogs.
I like that. All right. Let's see here. That was Willow. 50 Shades Geek also writes, also Aaron and Chris are beautiful. Just thought I should mention that. Sorry if I'm overstepping. No problem. I'm sure they would appreciate that, 50 Shades. Raymond Verrata writes, I noticed we shared the same reaction to The Rise of Skywalker, but after all the critiques, I decided to retire from your show early. Unlike if I were more enthusiastic about the movie, I would have stayed until the end of the show. Looking forward to Star Wars in 2022. So what Raymond's referring to is, I did a 3.5 hour Star Wars open spoiler discussion the other day, and I don't expect people to hang around for the full 3.5 hours. A lot of people watched for a while, jumped out, then a bunch of new people would jump in, watch for a while, blah, blah. It was 3.5 hours. Now, there are still questions to get to that came in, and I thought it would be great to get a different perspective, because you heard about 3.5 hours of my perspective. I thought it would be good to get a different perspective on it. So Robert is actually, he's already started recording the companion video to that. Two parts, all the other questions that didn't get answered. So you've got about 3.5 hours of mine. You're going to get a couple of hours of Rob's perspective as well.
At least.
And that's going up today?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going up today. Rob's going to finish that up later today. Give it till the evening. Don't expect it in the next couple of hours. But that's going to be fun. So thank you for hanging in there as long as you did, Raymond. I appreciate it, man. It was a lot of fun. Doing that spoiler discussion was a lot of fun. All right. Next up, Saburo writes, John, The Witcher was awesome. The episode with the dragons, dude. Listen, guys, I know, Saburo, you didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to. Guys, please be careful when you're writing in stuff to the show. Like, we trust in the common sense of our audience. Do not put things in questions where you're going to be spoiling things for people. And I know that wasn't your intention. I know there was no ill intent, but you got to be careful, guys. Please be careful. Okay, anyway, Murray Reich writes, I keep telling all my friends that are Browns fans that quit while you are ahead with all this nonsense that you were going to the Super Bowl. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't capitalize from last season, but hey, they are the Cleveland Browns, right? Listen, I said last year I called, when everybody called me crazy, I called the amount of wins the Cleveland Browns would get. Actually, they went over what I called, which was great. But when everybody started saying this season, Rob, you guys can go back and watch my old episode saying Cleveland Browns are going to the Super Bowl this year. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes on Super Bowl talk. They're getting the ship turned around. They're no longer the laughingstock of the NFL, and they got some really promising good pieces, but pump the brakes. And, I mean, they underperformed this year. I still think they've got a lot of good building blocks. I do. I think they've got a good young quarterback. I like this kid. And I think they're going to be okay moving forward. But yeah, it was kind of crazy with that. Seahawks suffered a weird loss.
You had to bring it up.
But I mean, I didn't watch the game, but I popped on the score. I'm like, wait a minute, I can't be seeing that. They lost to the Cardinals?
The Seahawks have a lot of injuries. I mean, I'm not making excuses for the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest.
Did they sit Russell Wilson for the? Like, I couldn't figure it out.
It was brutal. I mean, their defensive line has been brutalized. It was rough. I have to say, it was really rough. And, they're not a healthy team right now. And I hope against the 49ers, because I'd love to see them beat the 49ers again, it's going to be a rough slog. And the Seahawks, they've got a lot of injuries. And I'm not trying to make excuses. It's just they're in bad shape right now.
Somewhat related, the New England Patriots won against a very good Buffalo team. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Rob. Because neither the Patriots nor the Seahawks are winning the Super Bowl this year. I mean, at this point, it's written in the stars. The Baltimore Ravens, I think, right now look like an unstoppable juggernaut. They really do. I mean, I think we're all just living in Baltimore Ravens world this season. We'll see how it goes next year, but I think right now we're just all kind of living in the Baltimore Ravens world.
But they deserve it.
Yeah, hey, they've done great. Murray Reich also writes, oh, and by the way, can we stop calling the Cowboys America's team already? You guys suck. We dem boys, more like we done boys. You sure are qualified winning the Turd in the Wind award. Well, hey, listen, I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I remember when I was a little kid. I was a little kid. I liked the Dallas Cowboys when they had a guy at the quarterback by the name of Danny White. And Danny White was also, I believe, the last quarterback in the NFL to be both his team's quarterback and their punter. He was their quarterback and their punter. I think this is back in the Tony Dorsett days. But anyway, like I said, I was a child at the time. But so I don't like the Cowboys. But listen, they are the most recognizable brand in the NFL.
They were America's team when John Wayne was still making movies.
Yeah, but they're still America's. I don't like them, but they're still America's team. I mean, they are the most recognizable. How about them Cowboys? They've got fans in every city in the U.S.
And let's face it, they did inspire Debbie Does Dallas.
And they inspired that and the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. All right, next up, James Germain writes, hey, John, I got a two-parter. 1, what's your thoughts on Witcher Season 1? 2, on the spoiler discussion, you mentioned the Force projection between Rey and Ben. Don't think that's what it was. I believe it was Force Bond. Anyway, I'm not going to discuss that. I'm not going to discuss what could be, like I had a spoiler discussion that's limited to the spoiler discussion. I can't go into details that could risk revealing things about Star Wars Force Awakens. There are still a lot of people that haven't seen it. I can't go into that. As far as what my thoughts on Witcher Season 1 is, magnificent. I mean, look, it's got some problems here and there, but overall, I was just so floored as this show progressed through the episodes. And they start to reveal all the storytelling techniques they were using and the way they bound it all together. I was really impressed. I was personally really impressed. Look, non-linear storytelling is not a new thing. I've personally never seen non-linear storytelling used as effectively the way they particularly did it in the first season of The Witcher. And I can't say anything more than that, but for me, it worked really, really well. Let's see. Michael W. Roberts writes, on one show you said, this week my Patriots will destroy some poor victim. I've loved you since I'm a Pats fan from Boston. I wanted to know how you became a Pats fan, and were you with Robert Meyer Burnett during the Super Bowl 49 Seahawks versus Patriots? No, I was not. But man, if I could have a hot tub time machine, I would go back to that moment.
Look, man, Uncle Pete was playing some strategic ball. Nobody knew he was going to throw that pick.
That's the thing. Listen,
he had 4 downs to get in.
That's the thing. Yeah, I still contend that Pete Carroll called a brilliant play. Because if it had worked, and he threw the ball when everybody was expecting run, and they caught it, they would be lauding it as one of the gutsiest, boldest, smartest decisions ever in a Super Bowl. But it didn't work.
Nope.
It went wrong. Patriots picked it off and whatever, and now everybody calls it the worst decision ever. But if it worked, we'd all be claiming him to be the greatest genius in football.
Yeah, everyone knew what was going to go down. He tried to play it up. He had 4 downs. He had 4 chances to get into that end zone, and it went horribly, horribly awry, and I'm about to vomit now, even years later. Why'd you have to bring it up? Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas.
How I became a Patriots fan is that, like Coach Parcells, I'm a guy who, ever since I was a kid, I've liked coaches. And I became keenly aware that coaches are important in hockey. They're more important in football. And they have a lot more influence over the success of their teams. And that's when I started following the Seahawks, was when Coach Carroll went from USC to Seattle, because I just thought he coached a very entertaining brand of football.
And he
does. And so I started watching and following, not my favorite team, but I started becoming somebody who would cheer for the Seahawks when they weren't playing my Patriots. I grew up as a Buffalo Bills fan because I just lived so close to Buffalo. Hamilton's like an hour and a half away from Buffalo. And when the New York Giants played the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl and they beat the Bills, last second missed field goal, yes, but they were outcoached too. And you had 2 incredible coaches. You had Coach Marv Levy and you had Coach Bill Parcells. Maybe the GOAT. Coach Parcells might be the GOAT. So I started following Coach Parcells. And then Parcells eventually ended up on this little ragtag team called the New England Patriots at the time. And I started following them. I started following them because Coach Parcells went there. Now, at the time, they had this quarterback, Drew Bledsoe, who was good. He was their starting quarterback, and they had this backup quarterback who was the last picked in the draft, some kid named Tom Brady. And history was made. Drew Bledsoe got injured. Tom Brady came in. They won their way through the playoffs, won the Super Bowl, and now he's got 6 shiny Infinity Stones on his hands. But that's when I started following them. Now, they were still my second favorite team to the Buffalo Bills at the time. But then the Buffalo Bills committed one of the greatest betrayals of their fans in NFL history, in my opinion, when they were having a great season with Doug Flutie as their quarterback. Doug Flutie was a quarterback. I mean, and he was taking the NFL by storm. They made a cereal after him called Flutie Flakes. I mean, he was this like 5'0" little guy who was just ripping teams apart. Loved Doug Flutie, and he was taking them all big season. They won a ton of games, and then they get into the playoffs, and they decide, you know what? We've got this kid we drafted really high. We should use him. His name was Rob Johnson. And no offense to Rob Johnson. Like, this is not, I don't blame Rob Johnson for this. But everybody, all the fans of Buffalo was like, what? Like, Flutie took us through this incredible season, and now we're in the playoffs, and he's not injured, and you're just going to sit him to bring in this rookie quarterback? And of course, they got their asses kicked. It was the single, other than a team pulling up and leaving town, it was the biggest betrayal a team ever committed, in my opinion, at least as somebody who was a Buffalo Bills fan. It was the greatest betrayal of a team's fans I had felt in forever. And I was like, I'm done with you. And I was done with the Bills after that. Now, I still have a soft spot in my heart for the Bills. But anyway, I had started following the Patriots at that point, and they kind of became my team. And I've been sort of following them ever since Coach Parcells went in there with this little quarterback named Drew Bledsoe. So now, your story with the Seattle Seahawks, you're from Seattle.
I'm from Seattle.
Much easier story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Seahawks were an expansion team along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, in 1976. And, you know, they built the Kingdom, which, rest in peace. And you, as a kid, it was very exciting. And that's how I started going to see the Seahawks. And they were, you know, They were never very good. But we did have Jim Zorn and Steve Largent, and that was a quarterback and a receiver that we all loved, and we got behind them. And I just thought, Jim Zorn was the first quarterback I knew, and I thought Zorn was such a cool last name. Jim Zorn just sounded cool. And Steve Largent, with his blonde hair and his curly hair, it was good. And the Seahawks, I like the fact that they have Native American iconography, the design. I've always loved the design of the Seahawk, and the colors appealed to me, and I've always liked them. And it's funny later in life when they started to get really really good. They were always up and down, but to see them win a Super Bowl, what was it 2014?
Yeah, and they spanked them. That was a dominant Super Bowl.
And that was, Russell Wilson was like a rookie quarterback. He came in, what a cool experience to have. And then they went to the Super Bowl the next year, and it might not have worked out.
They ran into a little team called the New England Patriots.
But it was still. I mean, we had the Legion of Boom, and
they look good this year. I mean, unfortunately, they're looking good in a year of the Baltimore Ravens, but they're looking really, really good this year. All right, let's keep going here. Tom Gillard writes, Episode 9 is my new favorite Star Wars film. Everything you said about it really helped strengthen my own view. That's, by the way, let me get to that in a second. It is also by far the horniest Star Wars movie. Everyone in that movie is horny for someone.
Thank God. Thank God, because if anything genre fans need, it's to be more horny. People got kissed. There were kisses all over the place.
Listen, Tom brings up something that I'm so glad you brought up, Tom. I always say in this show, Rob, that my job is not to say what people agree with, nor is it my job to convince somebody to agree with me.
Right.
My job is to give my honest opinion on something and hopefully give it in such a way and give it in such a context that it helps the viewer sharpen what it is they think, whether it's the same thing I think or whether it's the opposite thing that I think. If I can communicate with a particular context, my own honest point of view, and if I can communicate it effectively to the point that the audience member helps sharpen their own point of view, same or opposite of mine, then I've done my job. And I didn't like Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. But Tom, if you watched it and you loved it, and watching me talk about it helped you sharpen your own personal point of view on it, then honestly, to me, that's the highest honor you can give me. To me, that is to me mission accomplished. Not to get you to change your mind, not to get you to have my point of view, but to help you focus in and sharpen your own personal point of view, even when it's the opposite of mine. That to me is something that's going to make me finish today's show and feel good about it. That happened, because that's the job. Not to say things you agree with, not to make you change your mind, but to give you context and give you my own personal opinion and express in such a way that it helps you sharpen yours. And if that happened, then awesome. So I thank you so much, Tom, for sharing that, and I really appreciate that you have that particular point of view. All right, next up, Nathan Oswald writes, I love Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I was so happy with it. God bless JJ. And hey, listen, I came out of this movie, Rob, and I said, I didn't like it. But I know a lot of people are going to like this thing. And sure enough, there are a lot of people who are liking it. Tom Gillard also follows up and writes, when I saw Dave Filoni in an X-Wing, I thought, Dave, fly now? Dave, fly now. I get it. Dave Filoni and Deborah Chow and Rick Famuyiwa, great actors they are not. And God bless Deborah Chow. She's directed the 2 best episodes of the show. Rick directed a great episode as well. Dave got the show off to a good start. So God bless them all for that. But actors, they are not. But it was still really fun to see the 3 directors as the X-Wing pilots in that episode, Rob. I really like that. By the way, 1 week till the finale.
I know.
1 week till the finale.
Think he's going to take his helmet off?
I do. Because they're making such a big deal that he doesn't. There's got to be setting up to he does. And by the way, guys, side note here. Speaking of Mandalorian and Witcher, I used to feel like I prefer shows dropping all at once, like on Netflix, so I can binge them. But I understood the wisdom from a practical point of view of what Disney Plus is doing and what HBO does, which is release them week to week, because you can build momentum and all that kind of stuff. So I prefer it one way, but I understand why they did it the other way. The Mandalorian and The Witcher, for 2 opposite reasons, have completely changed my mind. I now vastly prefer week-to-week releases now. Because Witcher, we're all talking about it right now. 5 days from now, no one's going to be talking about it again.
Right.
With Mandalorian, we as a fan community, and to me, this entertainment stuff is all about how I get to interact with the rest of my fellow film fans and interact with my fellow storytelling fans. Mandalorian has been so awesome, not just because the show has been really entertaining, but because every single week we get a new episode and then we get to all talk about it. We're all caught up. We're all on the same page. We've all seen up until episode 7 now. And we're all been going along this journey together, and we've been talking about it and enjoying it for nearly 2 months now. And that has been great, and I've enjoyed it so much. Witcher? I mean, some people have not seen a single episode. Some people have watched all of it. Some people have watched 2 episodes. Some people, and in 5 or 6 days, we're not going to be talking about it anymore. And it's going to be gone. And these 2 shows now have really solidified and really made me think, Rob, that, you know what? I don't now only see the wisdom of releasing week to week. As a fan and as a member of the fan community, I prefer week to week. I think it's better for the shows. I think it's better for the fan community. So I don't know. I know this is a topic I should have made a topic on the show, but Rob, what do you think about that? Where are you at right now on that?
I have to tell you, Watchmen, another show that was released week to week.
Yeah.
I found myself being a huge Watchmen fan. As much as I have so many conflicted feelings about Watchmen, I really enjoyed the week that I could spend devouring and contemplating the episodes before I got to the next one. And I did something I haven't done in a long time. I went back and watched a few of those episodes again before the next one aired to really sort of galvanize what I felt about the show. And I do, John. I think it's better. I think it lasts longer. You binge something, like you said. I watched Sex Education on Netflix, the Gillian Anderson show.
Right.
I loved. I adored. I loved watching it. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I can't remember it. I watched the whole thing, and I'm like, did I watch that show? Or Unbelievable, that show. I liked that show about the cops investigating these rapes. I thought that was a terrific show, beautifully made. Binged it. It didn't resonate. Watchmen I know it was Watchmen, that's part of it, but same with The Mandalorian. I think about The Mandalorian. I walk down the street, I think about The Mandalorian because there's another episode. What happened? I like the experience of it all, because when we grew up, John, when we liked something, it would marinate in our brains. We might watch movies over and over again on VHS, but we'd watch the same movie over the course of months, years, and it would permeate into our consciousness, and it would become part of us. And I think that's what being a fan is all about. That's why we became fans. And now there's all this embarrassment of riches, and it's in one ear and out the other. And it's like gobble, gobble, gobble. I have to eat everything that is put in front of me. I have to consume all of this. And it's more about the consumption than it is about the enjoyment. And when something is strung out, you enjoy it more. Slow down. You don't have to eat so fast. That's why when you go to Spain, you have 2-hour lunches with lots of paella and wine, and it's so much more conversation rather than gobble and go.
I completely agree. All right, let's get back onto back onto the questions now. Taki75 writes, the end of The Rise of Skywalker was more like Ready Player One than Endgame. I don't disagree, but I clearly can't go into why I don't disagree. We can't go into it, unfortunately, Taki, but point well made. Devin Mellinson writes, just wanted to say, love the show. John, hope you're having a great day. Hey, listen, any day I get to sit down in a room with Robert Meyer Burnett and talk about movies and our favorite stuff is always a good day. Thank you for being here, Devin, and thanks for supporting the show, man. Adam Henson writes, saw my neighbor's cat have a shit in my garden today. Does that count as seeing cats? Apparently, yes.
Well, at least that cat has a butthole.
At least the cat has a proper butthole. So I'm going to say, Adam, yes, I think you're onto something there. Well said. An anonymous writer writes in, part 1. Hey, John and crew, just wanted to write in and say I love all that you do, John, and your work inspires and thrills me. I've been watching since the closet days of the AMC, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and everyone else, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Anonymous. We appreciate that. See, where do you got a part 2? Yes. Also, I just binge watched The Witcher. I have to say, I absolutely fell in love with this show. The editing, action, and storytelling is so beautifully hardcore and fascinating to me. This show is new and improved Game of Thrones. Thoughts? I am not going to say I think it is a new and improved Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has become the gold standard of television. No show will ever be nominated for as many Emmys and win as many Emmys and impact the pop cultural consciousness like Game of Thrones has. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. I at least not for a long time. So I'm not going to say that. But oh my gosh, I did really enjoy this season. And it's again, and I even think its storytelling may not be as good of a story, but its storytelling approach is so high level that I might even say it's a little more high level than the way Game of Thrones did it. But overall, I wouldn't say it replaces Game of Thrones or is the new Game of Thrones, but I really, really enjoyed it, dude. Like, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot. And Rob, I know you're only one episode in.
Yeah, and I mean, what's not to love? And
you haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet.
No, but like, Game of Thrones, here's the thing. I mean, Game of Thrones... is Witcher like a direct adaptation of the books? I got to look into what they're...
It's more the books than it is the video games.
Right.
And I've not read the books, but I've been hearing from many people who do read the books it's more the books, but it's not exactly to the books, which is understandable.
Yeah, see, I also, when I like shows, I like to do a little background reading on the showrunners and what their thoughts are, and I haven't done that yet, and I usually do that when I get into a show, and I'll spend when we're off for the next week or whatever, I'm going to really delve into that.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing here. Next one up comes to us from Christopher Benson, who writes, Michael Douglas won an Oscar for Wall Street, but his other performance in 1987, Fatal Attraction, was just as good. Glenn Close was also great. Wait a second, but didn't... I thought Wall Street came out in 86.
So did I.
Let me double check here. I want to check this out.
Greed, John, is good.
Greed works.
Greed works.
No, it did not. It did come out in 87.
Wow, okay.
It did come out in 87. So I thought it came out in 86 and won at the Academy Awards in 87 because always the Academy Awards are considered the year after the movies come out. But apparently that is the case. Listen, he was great. I might even say that Fatal Attraction might even be a better movie than Wall Street. Maybe. But I don't know. Him playing Gecko in that is one of the... I'd say that's a top 10 best performance ever. I honestly think that's a top 10 best male performance ever as far as Academy Award winners go. That was great. He was great in Fatal Attraction, but I know I'd still give the nod to his performance in Wall Street. What about you?
Here's my thing.
You got a soft spot for Fatal Attraction. I know that.
I like Fatal Attraction, but I couldn't believe there's one scene at the beginning of that when Ann Archer is getting ready and you see her exposed midriff and like she was so hot. Ann Archer is so beautiful. And I was so in love with Glenn Close for her roles in World According to Garp and Big Chill. I thought they did her dirty. I didn't like... She was awesome as a harpy. She was awesome, but they gave her the frizzy hair and, they made her evil. And I love Glenn Close. I'm like, how do you make my beloved Glenn Close evil? And they did. But,
that's her most memorable role of all time. That's going to be the first film that comes to people's mind when they think of her now.
I know.
She just turned in such a great performance.
You know what? She was Dangerous Liaisons. But go back and watch World According to Garp. She's great in that. Same with Big Chill.
All right, next up, Toonie Toon writes, after the good but not great first weekend, over under 50%, Rise of Skywalker hits $1 billion. It was a great opening weekend. Not as good as it could have been. But it's the number 12 all-time cinematic history opening weekend of all time. I don't know how much. It doesn't got a lot of room to be better. But I'm still going over 50% that it hits $1 billion. I'm still going over 50% that it hits $1 billion. This is a film that a lot of people like. Rob and I were talking about this before the show started, that its verified audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes is 86%. That's verified. That's people who actually did see the movie, and Rotten Tomatoes verifies that. So, yeah. Again, I've always said, this is a movie that'll hit $1 billion. It will not hit $2 billion. I've said that all along. I still believe that. But yeah, I believe over 50%. I'm not going to say 99%, but I still believe well over 50%. What do you think, Rob?
You know what? I'm going to have to go with you on that. I think, Star Wars is all about repeat viewing. That's why it does as well as it does. And I think people are going to keep going back.
I know I'm going to see it. I don't even like the movie, but it's Star Wars, so I'm still going to go see it one or two more times.
You can't. The first time you see it, you're trying to take it all in. You can't settle. You're too I want to settle back in and watch it again.
All right, maybe we should do that.
We should do that.
We'll book some tickets.
I want to see it at Dolby.
Oh, we got to go see it at Prime.
I want to see
we got to
it
go see it at
doubly.
the Dolby Prime. Yeah. All right. Darth Devo Knievel writes, Star Wars, saw Star Wars, loved it, smelled crap in the lobby, and looked up and saw a theater sign for cats. It's so bad, it created a tangible stench that came off the movie screen and infected the rest of the theater.
The thing is, if nothing else, I really want to see Cats, John. Don't you want to see it?
Listen, I went...
You're a song and dance man.
Here's the thing. I went from wanting to see it because it's Tom Hooper to then hearing how bad everybody disliked it, so thinking, okay, maybe I won't go see it. I don't want to heartbreak myself. But now hearing how bad it is, I'm like completely morbidly curious about watching this. Now I feel like I gotta watch it. So it is doing that to me. All right, next up, Chris Miner writes, Happy Festivus, John. Festivus for the rest of us. Pretty soon we will have the airing of the grievances and then feats of strength. John, even if you don't celebrate this iconic Seinfeld holiday, I hope you, your family, and the crew have a safe and Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And may all of you at home have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Just have a great, break this week. Spend it with friends, family, loved ones, all that sorts of stuff. So thank you for sharing that, Chris Miner. And may you have, indeed, impressive feats of strength. All right. Cody John Walker sends in a $50 tip. And just so you guys know, on the rare occasion that somebody wants to send in a super chat or a tip that is $50 or more, I will answer that question in its own standalone 3 to 5 minute video. So I'm going to get to yours, Cody, but let's at least address quickly here what it is you wrote. And thank you for sending that in, man. Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much. Love The Rise of Skywalker and found funny parallels to Endgame. Did you catch them? On your left, there are more of us. I am the Sith. I am inevitable. I am Jedi. I am Iron Man. Destroy Palpatine. Well, here's the thing, Cody. I cannot go into that. I can't go into that because we can't go into spoilers and reveals, things like that. What I will say is that I'll go more in depth on your standalone video when we can give a spoiler alert to people. But what I will say is this. A lot of the comparisons are not things that were created in Endgame. A lot of the comparisons people are making are things that many, many, many other movies did before Endgame ever did them. So I just want to say that. Again, we'll get to your thing. We'll put a spoiler warning on your question when we get to it, but that's all we can say for now. Lanzo writes, zero cliche love story. CM.
Captain Marvel?
Captain Marvel? No cliche love story in Captain Marvel. Very refreshing. I do not like love stories in my comic book movies. There are a couple of very rare exceptions.
What about Scott and Jean in X-Men, brah?
No, the way they did it in this X-Men? No way.
Well, it could have been done better.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so no, I hated it. Hated it. The Wolverine, Scott, Jean love triangle thing was terrible. It was distracting. Thor and Jane.
What about
terrible.
Lois and Superman?
Listen, I love Man of Steel.
What about Superman the movie?
Not the best. Yeah, even not the best in Superman movie.
Pink.
Who?
You're wearing pink.
Oh, even then, no. The Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Peter and Gwen Stacy, that was great.
It was good.
Tony Stark and Pepper Potts is great. That's really all I got. I can't think of many more of them. I really prefer my comic book movies not to have love stories in them. Again, rare occasion that they do work, but for the most part, I'm not a big fan of them. Do you have any others besides those two examples that like actually really work for you?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see. I like great romances, but they don't tend to work in genre fiction. At least in our Star Wars, Star Trek superhero movie milieu. But I'd like to see it happen one day.
All right. Blake writes, which scenario do you think is more accurate? 1, Lucasfilm had no overall plan for the trilogy and just made it up as they went along. 2, they had an overall treatment, were surprised by The Last Jedi reception, and then changed Episode 9 in response. Thanks. Well, it's not a matter of opinion, Blake. I mean, it's been pretty much verified. This is what I said about it, Rob, and this is how it's been communicated, and this is now pretty much understood. Because all you have to hear is listen to how JJ talks about The Last Jedi and how it was different than what he was going to do. Kathy Kennedy, who I believe was the right person to lead Lucasfilm. She was handpicked by George Lucas, for heaven's sakes. but she made some bad, even she was the right choice, but then she made bad choices. I often talk about the main failure Kathy Kennedy has had, who is probably one of the, if not the single most gifted producer, at least up there in the top 3 or 4 in the history of cinema. Steven Spielberg says she's the greatest producer he's ever worked with, and he's the greatest filmmaker of all time. I've talked a lot about her inability to properly vet and make 100% sure that she and her directors are on the exact same page with each other before announcing them as directors and letting them loose on projects. That's a big thing. But the other big weakness that I've now recognized has been this, Rob. And tell me what you think about this. Kathy Kennedy decided to approach these Star Wars films as a producer instead of as a studio head. And as a producer, her modus operandi and philosophy is, it is my job as the producer to enable, to facilitate, and to empower directors to do their movies and bring their visions to life. That is the role of the producer, according to Kathy Kennedy. And she empowers, facilitates, and enables her directors that she has worked with over the years to make some of the greatest films in cinematic history. The problem is, you can't have that mentality when you're talking about an ongoing cinematic universe or franchise. You can't just let a director loose to do whatever they want to do. I know everybody, we as film fans are such hypocrites because there's so many film fans who go, let the director, studios don't interfere. Let the director do their art. Stay out of their way. And yet then they'll go, Kevin Feige's the best. Well, what do you think Kevin Feige does? Kevin Feige is the embodiment of studio interference. Kevin Feige is the studio. He is the studio. He is the president of the studio. He is the embodiment of, but what Kevin Feige does is he lays out the roadmap and says, look, you got to hit this marker, you got to hit this marker, and you got to hit this marker, and don't do this, this, and this. Now, understanding those parameters, director that I have chosen, go make your movie. Take all the liberties you want that work around those things, but understand we're starting here and we got to finish here. And as long as you do that, you can do whatever else you want in the middle there. Kathy Kennedy approached Star Wars as a producer who just wanted to empower directors, which is great for a producer. But she should have approached it with the mentality of a studio head to say, listen, we got these 3 new movies. She should have got herself, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, Chris Terrio, Lawrence Kasdan, Pablo Hidalgo. She should have got a brain trust of people, taken a retreat to Skywalker Ranch, bunkered down there for 2 weeks and said, this is our beginning point for our first Star Wars movie. This is where we're going to start. And by the time we get to our final Star Wars movie, this is where it needs to end. This is where we need to be when this ends. Now, directors, go make your movies, just understanding as you're making your movies, this is our start and this is where we finish, and make sure what you make and create falls in line and gets us there. That's how she should have approached it. She approached it as a producer instead of as a studio head. And I think that was her one of her fundamental flaws. I don't know, Rob, you hearing me express that? How do you respond to that?
I think that's an interesting, probably there's a lot of validity in that. I also think that one of the biggest problems here is that Disney spent a lot of money and they thought, okay, we spent this money, we've got to get a movie out into the marketplace. We're gonna. I think they needed a little bit more time with R&D to figure out their approach. You spend $4 billion, you owe it to your shareholders to get a return. And The Force Awakens did just that. Whether you loved The Force Awakens, I did not, but whether you loved it or not, it succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. $2 billion plus. Kathleen Kennedy did her job. They got the right people for the job. They made that film. It didn't break the bank, and it came out and did what they wanted it to do. And I think once they were able to do that, they needed to really move forward a little carefully. They started very aggressively. We're going to have Star Wars story movies. We're going to hire all these directors. We're going to do all this stuff. I think they put a little cart before the horse. And I think that is Kathleen Kennedy's fault because she was trying to act like a studio executive as opposed to being a producer. I think she's been sort of pushed and pulled. Disney was probably going, hey, you made $2 billion. Who had done that before other than Avatar? You know, it's like, my God, we're going to make $2 billion off every one of these movies. We have to get 10 of them in the theaters. And I think that that approach was their undoing. And again, I don't know, but I think
but you do
you're
have
right.
to remember, they announced the day they purchased, they made the announcement of the purchase of Star Wars. They announced, we have a new trilogy coming. So they knew they were doing 3.
No, they knew they were, but again, it's like, yes, but they didn't really stop to think, okay, let's lay this all out, you know.
And that's what they should have done.
They should have, because the original Star Wars movies were sort of haphazard, you know. Why don't we just throw them out and see what happens? But you're right. Look, in this day and age, if you're doing franchise filmmaking, I don't understand why anyone doesn't look at Lord of the Rings and go, that's how it should be done. You shoot all 3 movies at once, but you build enough post-production time in that if you have to go and do 60 days of pickups to make your movie work in the end, then that's what you do. That's what you do. But you got to figure out your entire story. And clearly they didn't do that with this sequel trilogy. And it would have served everybody. Their interests would have been well served if they knew what they were doing from the get. That's what I think.
Well, Rob, with all that said, we've run out of your time. We've had to get here. It's past 10:30. Time for you to head off to do all the stuff. I know you're building the Robsertorium.
The Robservatory.
The Robservatory. Thank you
yes,
very much.
And you know, I was going to do my 300 show today. I was going to do it yesterday. I don't think I can do it yet, but it's almost there. I want to refine it more. John, I got to learn more of your magic with Wirecast and all that to do it right. So if I don't do it today, I'll probably end up doing it on Friday because we're not going to be here Friday. You're going to be gone.
I'm going to be gone. Yeah. So just to give you guys a heads up. So the schedule for the show this week is, obviously we had a show today and we're going to have a show tomorrow. I might do a special little show on tomorrow's Christmas Eve, right? Yes. I might do a special just a little thing on Christmas Day just for fun myself. But then there will be no show Thursday or Friday. And then the John Campea Show will return on Tuesday. I might do some little videos here and there. And actually from Canada, what I might even do is if you guys want to continue to send in questions using the tip link, I might do a couple of pre-recorded shows answering all the questions you guys send in. But the live stream John Campea Show, there won't be anything after Wednesday until either Monday or Tuesday. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. But anyway, Rob, as always, it is awesome having you here. And this is the final show with you in 2019 here on the John Campea Show. Let me say in front of everybody, so I can't deny it or take it back, that working with you this year, working with you in general is one of the greatest honors for me in doing my show. I love doing this show with you. I love your perspective. You're obviously really smart when you agree with me. You're not as smart when you just, no, I love it when you offer different perspectives than mine. You're just fabulous on the show, and I'm so lucky to have you here. But anyway, in the meantime, Rob, once you do get the new studio up and running, you're able to do another show. And we still got those Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker.
Well, you're going to have those
today.
You are going to see more of me today.
But where are people going to find you, generally speaking, with your stuff online?
Well, you can. First of all, let me just also say that, John, doing the show has been an honor and a privilege, and being part of the 100 million views party was great. And all of the viewership, the constituency that watches both this show and my show has really been, I found, to be uplifting. It's been a very positive experience, and I want to thank you for rescuing me after the loss of our great friend John Schnepp. And I think we've got a great working relationship, and I love the team that you've built here. I love Aaron, I love Chris, I love Ray, I love Fact Checker Jonathan, I love your wife Ann, I love you, John. And it's been great. It's been a great year. I look forward to 2020. I look forward to all the things that we have coming down the pike. But if you want to find more of me, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram under Robert Meyer Burnett. Or you can also find Gilbert and Tallulah's Instagram under Gilbert and Tallulah. Or you can find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, which will be coming at you from the new Robservatory set.
Oh, by the way, I just said something completely wrong. I take everything back that I just said. I take everything back. I said this was the last show of you. But it's not. You're on the show tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
What was I thinking?
I mean, if you don't want me to be here, I don't have to be here.
I just make these mistakes all the time. I'm not going to repeat this tomorrow, by the way.
No.
So just take it
okay.
now. I'm very stingy in giving out this type of praise, so just take it now.
It's
I ain't going to say it again
Christmas Eve. You know, it's Christmas Eve in L.A.
tomorrow.
Yeah, right, and that's the first lines of the trailer from Die Hard.
It's Christmas
so you
Eve
never
in
know,
LA.
dude. We should go to Nakatomi Plaza and do a live
Just shoot it
broadcast.
there.
You know,
if only that was a Christmas movie. Oh, the debate continues. All right, Rob, thanks for being here, man, and we will see you again tomorrow. All right,
sir.
guys. We still got a whole bunch of time here. We got about a half hour left. So let's keep on rolling through your live questions. Next one up comes to us from Edward Wells, who writes, been a cat person and I feel ashamed. Only 6.5 million opening weekend. Dude, you should be ashamed that you're a cat person at all. I kid. I am not a cat person. I'm not a big fan of cats. I am more of a dog guy. But if you love cats, you love cats, and that's fine. And don't worry, a bad Cats movie does not negatively reflect on people who love cats. It doesn't at all. Lee Easley writes, almost 5 years ago, Dennis, Amy Rose, Schnepp, and you came to my hometown of Atlanta. I loved that event. That was a great, great time. I loved when we went to Atlanta. It was a treat. Hopefully you can do another event there. Our movie and entertainment scene has grown, especially with Perry's studio. Yeah, Tyler Perry opened a brand new studio out there. I love that. I was actually one of the keynote speakers. The reason we were in Atlanta in the first place was I was one of the keynote speakers at this big, huge AMC leadership convention that they did there. And speaking of Tyler Perry, I was technically the opening act for Tyler Perry. So it was the big keynote night, and I came out to address, these thousands of movie theater executives, managers, assistant managers, blah, from all across the country. And I gave my little spiel. My little spiel is online, which you can find. I'll post it again later. But then coming right after me was Tyler Perry. So I was kind of the opening act to Tyler Perry that night. That's my claim to fame. And I do hope I get a chance to come back to Atlanta. We had a great time when we did our stuff in Atlanta, and I hope I get to do it again soon. Thanks a lot for that, Lee. All right. Man Mountain Gherkin writes, Star Wars 1, Empire... Star Wars. Number 1, Empire. Number 2, Return of the Jedi. Number 3, A New Hope. Number 4, The Force Awakens. Number 5, The Rise of Skywalker. Number 6, Rogue One. Number 7, Solo. Number 8, The Last Jedi. Number 9, Sith. 10, Phantom. 11, Clones. You know what? Your list is very similar to mine. I would put Jedi number 1 and Empire number 2. And I would put Rogue One as number 5, Solo as number... So with just a couple of minor movements, your list is very, very similar to mine, Man Mountain. All right, Scooby Don't writes, I like that name. Top 5 Christmas movies. Number 5, It's a Wonderful Life. Number 4, The Grinch, the original cartoon. Number 3, You Rudolph. Number 2, Muppet Christmas Carol. Number 1, Die Hard. Any movie set at a Christmas party qualifies in my books. And again, it all depends. I mean, it's semantics. I say Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. It's not. Rob says it is. It all depends on our definition, though. Because if we are defining a Christmas movie as any movie that takes place at Christmas time, then I will agree that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. If, however, you have a more specific definition of what a Christmas movie is, where the season of Christmas itself is a tangible part of the narrative of what the story is, the meaning of and the application of Christmas becomes a meaningful part of the narrative. Then I think a lot of people would agree, well, then Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie. But we all have different definitions for how we're qualifying what a Christmas movie is, so I think mostly it's semantics. George writes, isn't it easier to get an audience clap? Let me see this again. Isn't it easier to get an audience clap that opening day Thursday, Friday from movies like Star Wars, Marvel, and DC? I never go those days. I always go Saturday or Sunday opening weekend, and very rarely do I get an audience clap at my shows. Just my experience. I mean, if that's your experience, that's your experience. My experience has been, I've been to movies on its 4th or 5th day, like a Saturday and Sunday, and had audience reaction depending on the movie. I've also been to movies on like opening preview night where it doesn't get reactions. So that may be your experience. Mine's a little bit different. So I guess it depends on what everybody else. Guys, what do you guys think? Do you experience that you get an audience applause at the end of the film more likely on Thursday and Friday? Do you find them to happen less often on Saturday and Sundays, or do you find there to be no difference? How have you guys' experiences been? I want to know what you think. Jump in the comment section below and leave your thoughts. All right, the McDougal Bugle writes, did you read Mandalorian Episode 5? Actor Jake Kavanaugh's trash talk, Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, the dude's an idiot. What an idiotic thing to do. Don't lie. Don't lie and say you like something you don't like, but you're right now in the Star Wars universe. Don't sit there and actively crap talk something else in the Star Wars universe. You want to do that 5 years from now? Do that 5 years now. But you're a fucking idiot. It was such a stupid thing to say. Anyway, Jay Z, oh my God, Ruler writes, hey John, maybe there's a way you two can have cake and eat it too. Instead of buying a house, rent one. And have you considered buying a house in Canada for summer use only? Dude, I can't afford to pay a mortgage on a house and pay rent in LA. I think you are allowed to live in 2 homes in 2 different places. Are they pricey? Again, the rent in Burbank is so expensive. Owning a house, we talked the other day about owning a house. It's too expensive in LA. It's too expensive. I mean, I was showing you guys pictures the other day of the houses that agents have been sending to me. And they're these dumpy little crap shacks that are 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 700 square feet for like $750,000. It's like, no, I'm not even going to attempt to pay that kind of money. If I'm going to pay that kind of money, I want a effing mansion. But no, so we're spending a lot of money in rent. I'm not going to we spend $3,000 a month in rent. That's how much I got to pay in rent to live here. It's not easy. But, my wife's job is up the street, and I don't want my wife having to be in an hour and a half each way commute in Los Angeles traffic. So it is what we got to do. If Ann didn't have her job, oh yeah, I'd be moving to Canada tomorrow, or somewhere in Texas, or somewhere in anywhere else in the U.S. that's not one of the big major metropolitan cities, where I could not have to spend that much money, because I can do my show from anywhere. As long as I got a good internet connection, I can do my show from anywhere. But what I cannot afford to do is buy a house and pay rent. I don't have the money to do that, so I can't do that. It's an interesting, you're thinking outside the box, but I can't do that. Dan M. writes, is it fair to blame Disney for the mixed and divisive state of the new trilogy, as they had no clear plan from the beginning, and they did course correction from Last Jedi as if it never happened? No, I more blamed Lucasfilm specifically. I mean, Disney doesn't get off completely scot-free, but, Disney clearly knows how to map out a franchise. They've done it with Kevin Feige, with Marvel. They clearly know how to do that. So I really put it more on Kathy Kennedy. And again, Kathy Kennedy is one of the greatest producers ever in the history of Hollywood. She just is. I don't care what you think about her. The fact of the matter is she's one of the best filmmakers in the history of the business from a producer's point of view. She just is. But she has made some drastically bad decisions at Lucasfilm. And I really think more of the responsibility of that lies on her shoulders than it does for people further up the chain. I mean, everybody at Disney who's the parent company has to take some of the heat too. But just as Kevin Feige gets a lot of the praise because he's the guy who's the head of the Marvel studio, she's the head of the Lucasfilm studio, and that's where more of it belongs. Zaya writes, just saw Jojo Rabbit. Love this movie so much. That's one of two. Two of two is, wow, that shoe scene was deep. I wasn't ready. Yeah, Jojo Rabbit, Zaya, is still my number 1 favorite movie of the year. It will end the year. I mean, I'm watching Honey Boy. I've got my award screener of Honey Boy, so I'll finally sit down and watch Honey Boy. But I just don't see anything replacing Jojo Rabbit right now. Jojo Rabbit is my favorite film of the year. And you're right, that shoe scene, dude, wow. I mean, when I was in the movie theater watching Jojo Rabbit and the shoe scene happened, and for those of you who haven't seen the movie, you have no idea what we're talking about. Those of you who have seen the movie, you know exactly what we're talking about. When the shoe scene happens, you could feel all the air in the theater get sucked out because everybody was, you could feel the air get sucked out of the theater. It was so powerful. Miha writes, your thoughts on Disney not releasing the original Star Wars theatrical cuts. By the way, thanks for making 2019 an awesome year. For us movie fans, happy holidays. Thank you so much for that one, and the honor is all mine, so thank you for being part of the community. It's not Disney's decision. George Lucas, when he sold Star Wars to Disney, he made it a part of the deal that they cannot release or re-release the original theatrical cuts of Star Wars. Because to George Lucas, those movies they no longer exist. The special editions to George Lucas, those are the true versions. Now, I don't like it. I don't like it, but it is what it is. To George Lucas, the special editions are the true definitive versions of Star Wars, and those original versions are not. And Lucas made it a part of the deal with Star Wars that you cannot re-release those things other than the special editions, which are the true, according to George Lucas, are the true representation of what the Star Wars trilogy is. So it's not something Disney can decide to do. George Lucas would have to change his mind and allow Disney to do that, because that's part of the sale. Like, listen, but he goes, but I don't get it. Disney owns Star Wars now. Yes, but if I sell you my car, right? You can put anything in a contract that you want. If I sell you my car and I put in the contract of sale, you agree that in purchasing this car, that you will never change the front tires. I don't know, something stupid like that. You have the choice to not sign that contract, but if you sign that contract, and in the contract says, yeah, you're buying the car and the car is yours now, but you agree as a part of the sale contract that you cannot change the front tires in that car, then you can't change the front tires of that car. And if you do, I'm going to come take my car back. Right? So it's going to be up to George Lucas or George Lucas's estate, 100 years from now, once George Lucas is no longer with us, somebody in the George Lucas estate to then make a deal with Disney to allow it to happen. But until then, it's got to be George Lucas that allows Disney to do it, because they can't do it. Anyway, Murray Reich writes, I bought the 99-cent Sam Jackson Alexa voice and it's so effing awesome. I didn't know that was available. I've got Google Homes all over my place. Like, I've got a Google Home down in my living room. I've got one here in the office. I've got one in my bathroom. But in my bedroom, we have an Amazon Echo. And thank you for letting me know about that, because I'm going to go add that voice to my to my Amazon Echo now. I'm all excited. Thank you for letting me know about that, Murray. All right, let's see. Jesse writes, John, someone on open mic said you could hear I have telepathy in the Captain Marvel and Thor scene in Endgame, and WTF, it's true. What was that? Again, I haven't had a chance to check that out yet. Somebody brought that up, that there's a line that says, I have telepathy, as Thor is standing there with Captain Marvel and he reaches out his hand and the hammer flies to him, in Avengers headquarters. I have never noticed that. And somebody brought that up on the show the other day. So I need to go. I've got it on my Google Play Store downstairs on my TV. I got to go downstairs, pop in that scene and watch it. And so I got to see it for myself, Jesse, and then I can try to figure out what the hell that's all about. All right. Colton Gregory writes, I felt like The Rise of Skywalker was the sequel to a movie we never got. It makes me respect Rian Johnson more now, because he had to know his film would get the reaction it did, but he made the movie he wanted to make. Can't say the same for episode 9. I mean, it's a matter of interpretation, Colton. I mean, it's a matter of interpretation. But I don't disagree, though. It really does feel like we missed a movie. Have you ever been watching a show on Netflix or Hulu, and then you stop watching to go do the things you got to do that day or whatever, and then you come back the next day to keep watching the series, and you put on the next episode, but then you're like, wait a minute, is this the next episode or did I miss one? And then you go back and realize, oh, I accidentally skipped over episode 5. Whoo, because you go from 4 to 6 and you're watching 6 and you're like, I feel like I'm missing something. The Rise of Skywalker does feel like that a bit. I've even had people tell me who really love The Rise of Skywalker that, yeah, it does kind of feel like we missed a movie, like we missed an episode, like there was supposed to be a movie in between there or something. So I agree with you. Rich from Queens writes, hey guys, and Rich sends in a really big super chat. Thank you, Rich, for supporting the channel on that level. Rich writes in, hey guys, with the success of Straight Outta Compton, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Rocket Man, what musician band would you like to see adapted next on the big screen? I'd personally love to see Hendrix or Bob Marley done right. Would love your takes. Okay, so I've been talking about this a little bit lately, Rich. I am the wrong guy to ask, because while I enjoyed Straight Outta Compton, and while I enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody, and while I enjoyed Rocket Man, and I enjoyed Walk the Line, I don't really care much about biographies about musicians. I really don't care. I would care more about, and I said this on the show the other day, I'd rather have, call me crazy, I'd rather have biographies about people who actually mattered. Call me crazy. I think one of the reasons we get so many biopics about musicians is because we are celebrity obsessed. Says the guy who does a daily movie show talking about movies and celebrities and movies. Yeah, I get it. You're not wrong. There's an inherent conflict in those statements, isn't there? I don't deny. You're right. There is. But it doesn't change the way I feel about it. We are a celebrity obsessed culture. And so we want to see these movies about people who, even though they really don't matter, they matter as much as any individual matters. But in the grand scheme of things, they really don't matter. They played some music. Okay, great. I would rather see biographies about people who actually did something that mattered. I would rather go see that movie about Winston Churchill and how it turned the tide of World War II. I would rather see, movies about the guy who cured polio, or I would rather see biographies about people who did things that, like a Nelson Mandela, or things about people who actually did something important. Hell, even like an Aaron Brockovich. I would rather see that. Now, again, that makes it sound like I don't like biographies about musicians, but clearly I do. I like Straight Outta Compton. I like Bohemian Rhapsody. Actually, I like both of those movies very much. I liked Rocket Man and stuff like that. Yeah, there have been some that I do enjoy. So it's not like, oh, if you make a movie about a musician, I'm just period not interested. No, that's not true. But if you're going to ask me what biographies do I want to see get made, I could list you 10 movies and none of them will be musical acts. None of them will be musical acts. They'll all be acts of people that mattered, in my opinion. So, but I get it. In our celebrity obsessed culture, we care more about what celebrities did. But I feel like a lot of whether you're looking at Walk the Line or Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man, they're basically all the same movie, right? An underdog who's got a lot of talent starts to hit it big and shines their light to the world with all their talent. And then they get caught up in the excesses and personal drama and drug abuse, and it nearly destroys them. And then they have a triumphant reclaiming of their life and stuff like that at the end. I just explained almost every musical almost every musical biopic that's ever come out. They're all basically the same. So, I don't know. And it sounds like I'm crap talking musical biopics when there are a bunch of musical biopics I actually really like. It's just, yeah. So the answer for me, Rich, is none. None movies about musical influences. None. If I was to put together a list of 20 people I'd be interested in a biopic, none of them would be musical acts. That's just me. If Robert were here, I'm sure he'd have a different answer. But unfortunately, it's just me, so that's my point of view on it. Anyway, Robert Tari writes, $175 million opening is a win for any movie. The box office story for this film is still being written. Let's wait and see what the final total is and make a decision. Well, listen, we don't need to wait for a final total. We are talking simply about, is this a good opening weekend? And to me, obviously, it's a good opening weekend. It is one of the biggest opening weekends in cinematic history. It is clearly a good opening weekend. Now, just to go back and take a look at this thing here, right now, the poll that we had up, right now it's had almost 5,000 of you guys have answered the question on the poll right now about, is this a positive or a negative? It's 176 million positive or negative, still right about the same. 58.5% are saying this is a positive outcome for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. 41.5% of you are saying negative, and I just don't get it. I don't get how you can look at a $176 million opening weekend in any way other than remarkably positive. But hey, this is why we all look at things differently, man. This is why we all look at things differently. All right. Robert Tari also writes, fact that Star Wars, a 40-plus-year-old franchise, can still bring in that kind of money in spite of controversy, oversaturation, and competition from a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie is impressive, most impressive. Oh, I agree. See, that's why I get into the debate comes up once in a while about, has like the MCU replaced Star Wars as like the preeminent movie franchise of all time? And I say, no, it might someday, but ask me again in 30 years. Let's see where the MCU is 30 years from now. When the MCU has hit 42 years old, are Marvel movies are Marvel Cinematic Movies still putting out movies that by today's inflation is putting out movies that open to $176 million when it's a 42-year-old movie franchise and still putting that out, then we can have that discussion. But I think a lot of people lose sight of that this is a over 4-decade-old movie franchise that is still going. And it just put out a movie with one of the biggest opening weekends in cinematic history. Now, I don't like the movie. I'm saying that as somebody who doesn't like the movie. And I've given it a bad review. But even I, as somebody who doesn't like the movie, you gotta go, this is clearly a big win. You have to want to look at this negatively. I feel like you gotta want to look at it negatively to try to paint $176 million opening weekend in any kind of a negative light. But again, hey, 41.5% of you guys have a different opinion, right? So it's what I've seen now. That's opening weekend. A second discussion, but a separate discussion, is going to be about its final total. So the opening weekend's the opening weekend. That's done. What's the final total? And then is the final total good or bad? Well, we'll have to see about that, in 2 months from now when it finishes its theatrical run. And that could be a totally different discussion. So we'll see how that goes at the time. All right. M Deads 1980 writes, "Hey, John, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. What are your thoughts on them not using any of the connective tissue from Rebels or even some of the new lore we got from Fallen Order? Missed opportunity for me. No, you should not put that nonsense in there. You should not put that nonsense in there." Nonsense, John, I thought you liked Rebels. I do. I like Rebels very much. And I like Fallen Order very much. But they're not the movies. They're not the movies. And the fact of the matter is maybe 1% of people who go to see Star Wars actually watch Star Wars Rebels. Maybe more than 1% of your circle watched it, but if you sit back and actually look at the overall number of people who watch Star Wars movies, average movie-going fans, like 1%, maybe 2% of them watch Rebels or played Jedi Fallen Order. So no, you shouldn't put connective tissue in there. You got to treat them as two separate things. Because ultimately you would just be putting that in there that 95, 97, 99% of your audience would have no idea what it is you're talking about. So personally, while I am a fan of Fallen Order and I am a fan of Rebels, no, I do not think not putting in connective tissue with that was a mistake. I think that was a very, very smart decision. I think that's a very, very smart decision on my part. So that's just me on my part. Like I made the decision. From my point of view, I thought it was a very smart decision. You shouldn't do that. Shouldn't do that because you'll be putting things in to do fan service to this percentage of your people watching the movie while you're alienating 98% of your audience. And I don't think that would have been a good idea. That's just my opinion, though. I could be wrong. All right. Lord Azen writes, remember David from Last of Us? He was the leader of a group and he was going to kill Ellie before she got the machete and hacked him to pieces. I think he got lucky Ellie killed because if Joel walked in and saw what he was trying to do, it would be worse. Listen, you know what? I don't remember the scene specifically. I watched I think it was 16 hours. I watched a 16-hour cutscene movie version, if you will. Cutscene movie version of Last of Us and loved it. I thought it was great. I think probably the three most truly cinematic games maybe ever made are Last of Us, Uncharted, Thief's End, and the latest God of War. But that was incredible. But I gotta admit, I don't know if I remember that specific scene off the top of my head. All I know, listen, Last of Us 2 is coming. Very excited for it. That was some great storytelling. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from there. All right. Lord Azen also writes, what's worse to hear at 3 a.m. in the dark? The clicking hunting sound of a predator made when it's watching you, or the sound of a clicker from Last of Us, which is worse? Oh, yeah, because they both have that. They both have that kind of sound, right? I think hearing the clicking sound of a predator would be worse because they are much harder to kill. You can kill one of the clickers in Last of Us. You can kill one of them. It ain't easy, but you can kill them. Predators, very, very, very difficult to kill one of those. So I think it'd be much easier to get away from one of the Last of Us creatures than it would be from a predator. So I'm going to go with predator on that one. Good question, but either way, that would be terrifying. All right. Dancing Dog 60 writes, why is January usually dump month? I think a part of it is that the holiday season is over. People have spent a ton of money at Christmas time, so they don't have as much disposable income available to them. Everybody's back to school, everybody's back to work, and not everybody's thinking about running out to the movie theaters. So I think while things are changing, I think why some studios will then use that as a dump month. I think that has a lot to do with it myself. Swimmy also writes, Babu Freak, hello, I'm Babu Freak, writes, Baby Yoda team up, make it happen. I'll tell you what, that's a movie that's going to get a lot of stuff. I overall didn't like The Rise of Skywalker. I really like Babu Freak. I like Babu Freak. I do very much. Swimmy also writes, plans for another Rise of Skywalker open spoiler discussion? No, I mean, we still have like 3 hours worth of questions to get caught up on, and that's going to be coming a little bit later today. Rob's working on those now, but I think we did about as much as we can do. I don't know if after we get the companion ones up, if I get enough people saying, John, I think now that Rise of Skywalker's been out for 6, 7, 8 days, I think we need another spoiler discussion. If I get enough people ask me for it, maybe we'll do it. I'm not planning on it right now, but if enough people ask for it, maybe we will. All right, Amir writes, hey guys, what do you think is the likelihood that The Rise of Skywalker doesn't reach $1 billion at the box office? I'm now thinking there's a chance it might not. If it didn't, would Disney change their approach to future Star Wars movies in any way? $1 billion isn't easy. No, $1 billion is, everybody now takes for granted, as if the $1 billion is the minimum mark you have to hit to be considered successful. That's so ridiculous. It's so stupid. I still think The Rise of Skywalker, despite the fact that I didn't like it, I still think it's going to hit $1 billion. It might not, it may, but I've always felt that it's going to go over $1 billion, never hit $2 billion. That's always kind of been my philosophy. I still think that. A lot of movies have opened to a lot less than $175 million and gone over the $1 billion mark. So Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker certainly can. Will it? I wouldn't say 90% that it will, but I'll still say over 50%. So I still think it's likely, but I wouldn't be willing to put a lot of money on it. But I still think it's likely. And as far as changing the way they do movies moving forward, they've already announced they're going to be changing the way they do movies moving forward. So that was something we've known from months ago. They've changed the way they're going to approach these. I just really hope that the next time they think of a trilogy of films, you don't have to plan out every single little detail, but at least have a general idea about this is where our movie is going to start. This is where the third movie is going to end. At least have that much in place before you go ahead and start. Because this constant changing of gears between Force Awakens to Last Jedi, from Last Jedi to The Rise of Skywalker, this retconning and changing gears and changing directions, it's not good for a trilogy. And I at least hope they get that figured out as they move forward. All right, Swimmy writes, John, your rank of the top 5 strongest Jedi, I don't do, just so you know, Swimmy, I don't do top 5, top 10 list answers. I just don't do those. I think from a lot of stuff I've read that Luke Skywalker is the most powerful Jedi of all time, but that's just kind of my take on it. Daniel Joseph writes, good morning, John. Who has been one of your favorite actors this decade? For me, it's Adam Driver. Having never heard of him before The Force Awakens, then seeing and loving his performance in Logan Lucky. He was really good in Logan Lucky. Black Klansman, he was great in that. Silence, great in that. He's been a favorite of mine. Of course, he's got Marriage Story right now, which he's absolutely fantastic in and is probably going to get an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for that. Man, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. And by the way, Joseph, that's a $50 super chat. So I'm going to answer this in its own video. And I'm glad I get to answer it in its own video. Because I'm going to have a chance to think about it. Because I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest with you. So I'm going to do your own video. It'll be a 3 to 5 minute video where I'll go into a couple of my favorite actors of the decade. It's not something I've just carried around at the top of my head. So let me get into that a little bit. It's a really interesting question. But yeah, you're right. You know what? I don't know that I would have thought of Adam Driver just off the top of my head. But you're right. Logan Lucky, I thought he was great in that. Black Klansman, he was marvelous in that. Marriage Story, he's incredible in that. Going to get an Academy Award. Of course, then there's his Star Wars work. So that's an interesting one, Daniel. I look forward to doing that. So I'll get her. And thank you for supporting the channel on that level, man. All right, inventory rights. John Robb, are the Patriots officially cheaters now? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Stylo Ken writes, Cats shouldn't have come out the same day as The Rise of Skywalker. You know what? I disagree. That's a great time for a movie like Cats to come out. It's been proven before that counter-programming works. Putting out another movie on the day that a big blockbuster is coming out that is completely different from that blockbuster and would appeal to a completely different audience, it's been proven that that can work and work really well. And Cats was definitely counter-programming. So I don't know that I think that had anything to do with it. That's just my opinion at any rate. Do it... for Cash writes, now when I watch The Last Jedi, I see a Palpatine Rey trying to seduce Luke into when he already knows the only point of a physical fight with Kylo would be to kill him, which why he obviously refused to do. I mean, yeah, like I've always said, a sequel never changes how I feel about a previous movie. The previous movie, like for instance, there's this Billy Crystal, Robert De Niro film called Analyze This, which is a great, great comedy. I love that movie. Then they did a sequel called Analyze That, which is just dreadful. It's terrible. But it being dreadful and terrible doesn't diminish my appreciation for Analyze This, the first film, at all, as a matter of fact. But you can do things in future movies that make you look at the events of a previous movie in a slightly different light. And I think you raise up a really interesting point there, Do It for Cash, is that you can go back. I think I would have to now go back, watch The Last Jedi, and watch that entire scenario, knowing that Rey is number one, a Palpatine, but knowing that Luke knows she's a Palpatine, which, by the way, was not what Rian Johnson had in mind when he made that movie, but still it is what it is now. Just like in the original trilogy, when Luke and Leia kissed, George Lucas had no idea he was going to make them brother and sister later. He didn't. A lot of people still don't know that George never intended for Luke and Leia to be brother and sister. It wasn't until much later in between movies he decided, you know what, I think I'm going to make it so they're brother and sister. And now we go back and look at the event in Empire Strikes Back with them kissing from a little bit of a different perspective. Like, oh my God, that's brother and sister kissing. But that was never his intention when he made it, which is kind of the same situation with The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker now. It's interesting. All right. Joshua Van Dyne writes, do you think the Star Wars saga would have been better overall if Vader was Emperor? Episode 9 just proved Palpatine was an idiot all along. No, I don't. I don't. Listen. A movie is always made as good as it is by its execution. It's 15% concept, 85% execution. Right? So you can say, oh, the movie would have been better if we did this. Not necessarily. You could have done that and it could have been 10 times worse. You could have had a worse idea, but executed it brilliantly and it could have won Academy Awards. So to me, initial concept is 15, maybe 20% of it. Execution becomes 85 to 80% of it. That's why you can get a stupid thing like Lego Movie. Who thinks of doing a movie about plastic building blocks? Well, it was all about execution because they executed a wonderfully enjoyable and entertaining film, and it's a great, great movie. So, yeah, I know. I do not think just in principle that just saying Vader was Emperor would have made Star Wars better. So, no, I don't think that. I don't agree with that. Spider Yavnik writes, greetings from Israel, John. That's the second person writing in from Israel today. I wanted to say that I'm very thankful for your show. Thank you so much, man. Last year, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I've had friends with type 1 diabetes. I was in a really dark and hard place, struggled at high school, and was really depressed. You helped me get through it. Thanks a lot. Oh, Liz, thank you so much, dude, for saying that. And again, I think it's a great testimony to the power of storytelling, the power of movies, and the power of the movie community. That really elevates. And we talk about this all the time, and it's always true. And I love hearing stories like that. So honestly, Spider, from myself and everybody else in the fan community, thank you for being part of our community. And I'm glad that the fan community and movies and the world of storytelling can be that for you and to help you get you through stuff like that. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing your story, man. I appreciate that. All right. Do it for Cash writes, John, please don't read my tip. I put a spoiler in. Sorry. Did you put a spoiler in? You know what? No, you said it vaguely enough that you didn't give away any I mean, everybody knew the Emperor was there, right? So you said it vaguely enough that nobody would know what you were talking about if they didn't see the movie. So don't worry about it, Do for Cash. You're safe. You're safe. But thank you for your thoughtfulness. All right, Miggy writes, saw Frozen 2 for a 7th time this weekend. That is all. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, John. Listen, I'll tell you what, I unapologetically really like that movie. I think Frozen 2 is really good. I've gone so far as to say I think Frozen 2 is better than the first Frozen. I think it's charming and fun, and I smiled a lot. Some very hilarious moments. Some really nice moments, too, as well. Gotta tell you, one of my favorite moments in the movie, and this was in one of the promotional pieces, so it's not a spoiler, but, you know, when, I can't remember what the name of this, Anna and, I can't remember what the name of the sisters are, but the ice one says to her sister, you can't just run after me into fire. And the sister says, then don't run into fire. There's something about that line that is so great. And you know me, I get really touched in movies by overt displays of loyalty and friendship. And that's why, to me, when she says, you can't just chase after me into fire, and the other one says, then don't go running into fire. The message is, because if you run into fire, I'm running into fire after you. I love that. I love that sort of stuff. It gives me chills. I got the hair on my arm standing up just thinking about it. That's the stuff that really gets me. And I really, really did appreciate that movie. And I'm glad you enjoyed it, Miggy. And even if it means you saw it 7 times. All right. R. Lee writes, whatever happened to the Rose and Finn budding storyline? I see Rise of Skywalker this weekend and they abandoned it. We barely see Rose. Kind of bothers me. Again, R. Lee, I can't go into it without discussing details of the movie. And I can't do that. But yes, that is clearly something that JJ just decided to abandon. And again, just one of the things that was a very disruptive change of gears from Force Awakens into Last Jedi, and then again from Last Jedi into The Rise of Skywalker. So, but again, I can't go into details about it because I'm not going to give away spoilers in the movie. But yeah, I mean, that happened, and it is what it is. If you want to hear me talk more about that, go back and watch the spoiler discussions because we do go into that quite in depth on the spoiler discussion. Thomas Patterson writes, it is worth noting that Saturday and Sunday were the 2 biggest shopping days of the year domestically, only partially behind Black Friday. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi released earlier in the domestic Christmas rush. The film can hope for legs, but it has a B+ cinema score. I mean, you're right. That's an interesting point. That the movie came out on the busy shopping weekend. That's true. I don't think, though, that means that even if it opened the week earlier, that automatically would have meant that it would have made $220 million, right? Did it have an impact? I think you're probably right, Patterson. Thomas. I think it probably had an impact, but I don't know if it would have been a big, significant impact. So, yeah, not really sure about that. Not really sure. All right, Anonymous sends in a $50 tip, which means I'm going to answer this in its own individual video a little bit later. I have been waiting to do this for a while, and I finally got my Christmas bonus. Thank you for everything you do, man. I love how logical your arguments are and how respectful you are to people that disagree with you. Thank you. Oh, well, not a question. I don't need your own video. Dude, thank you so much, whoever you are, Mr. Anonymous. Thank you for supporting the channel. It really floors me that... And I love it because, listen, in the YouTube world, everybody said for a long time, people will only watch shows if they don't have to support it. People don't support content that they enjoy. They just want to watch it and they don't care about supporting it. And I believed that for a while. I did. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I did. I kind of believed that for a while. But what's happened over the past 2 years is that you guys have proven that not only will you watch and enjoy the show and the content and stuff like that, but you guys are willing to also step up and support the content that you enjoy. And that's why we're here. So for all of you who become Patreon supporters, those of you who send in, the tips and the super chats and stuff like that, like you guys have continued to prove over and over again that if there is content that you enjoy and you like being a part of, you will actually then take the next step and support it, and to make sure it stays on and you want to be part of the thing that keeps it going. And seriously, thank you so much for that mentality. Thank you so much for your generosity, and thank you for supporting content that you enjoy watching. So thank you so much, Anonymous, and thank you to all of you guys who do that. All right. Josh Bing writes, one of two. When talking about Rey and Kylo, I see it as a girl who knew no real family or friends. Hold on a second. Can't answer the question. Trev's fans says, happy holiday, John. Love the show. Thank you so much. And again, sorry about that, Josh Bing, but you cannot put spoilers and stuff and expect, I can't read it. So I can't put spoiler stuff in these questions, guys. This isn't an open spoiler discussion. I know you didn't mean to. That wasn't your intention, but I hope you understand that I can't read it out loud. Philip Carbon writes, I love Star Wars 9. I saw it on XD on Cinemark. It was a great experience. My question is, can you identify all the Jedi? Oh, that... Again, can't answer that question because I can't get into spoilers. All right. Another Skywalker sends in $100. So if there's a question in here, I will address it in a thing. So thank you for the support, another Skywalker. Hi, John. I like The Rise of Skywalker. After killing off Snoke, it was going to be hard to introduce a new villain unless it was going to be Kylo, and there would have been considerable problems with that. I think JJ did great. And listen, I will address this in its own video as well. Another Skywalker. So again, thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level. I'll say this. I may not like how they executed having Palpatine in the movie. I still stand by it was the right decision to bring in Palpatine. I think Palpatine became the connective tissue of all the saga. And I think that was a good move. So yes, in principle, I still think it was the right decision and a good move to have Palpatine as the villain of the movie. I just didn't think they executed it right, and so I ended up being disappointed. But that doesn't change the fact that I thought it was the right strategic decision. Again, we'll go more into that when we answer your thing in your own standalone video. So thank you again for sending that in, another Skywalker, very, very much, and thank you for supporting the channel, my friend. And I'll get to your question in the next day or two. All right. Before Christmas, at any rate. An anonymous viewer writes in, as much as I loved the show, I think The Witcher would have failed if it was released week to week. Oh, I disagree. Its creative storytelling you keep talking about made it really hard to follow for the first few episodes, and I think it would have lost a lot of audience. I disagree, and I believe you just proved it. Because I have had shows, like Netflix shows, that drop, and I've watched 1 or 2 episodes, and if it does not hook me, I don't watch episode number 3. We've all got too many things to do with our time. We abandon it and we move on. I've done that. I'm sure you've done that. If it was week to week, if somebody watched episode 1 and they didn't like it, they're not going to watch episode 2. Maybe they'll give episode 2 a chance, but I would say if they were going to give episode 2 a chance, they would have given episode 2 a chance next week as well. So I disagree. Because I think you're assuming that if somebody sits down to watch a show that's been dumped, like in a full binge stuff, like the entire season, that, oh, they've just got 9 hours of free time. They're just going to watch it all no matter what. I disagree. I think if somebody sits down to watch a show and they don't like the first 1 or 2 episodes, they're not going to watch the third just to kill time. They're going to use their time to watch a show they might like instead of one that they're not enjoying. So I disagree. I think Witcher would have actually worked better as a week-to-week show. And I think it would have gotten even more because it would have week after week. I think it would have built its audience, had everybody talking, all that kind of stuff. So that's just me, though. That's just me. We might find that some people agree with you on that. All right. Taleni Ten Iliu writes, fan of the show, thank you so much. I'm hooked on the Witcher series. I'm only 3 episodes in, looking forward to the rest of the season 1 and the upcoming season 2. And listen, it just gets even better after episode 3, in my opinion. I think the first 3 episodes are very good. I think they're very good and they're solid. Again, I kept watching them. I didn't abandon it. I thought they were very good episodes, but it just gets better and better as you go. And I'm so excited for you, Teleni, that you're going to get to see even better stuff as you continue through. And I'm with you, man. I am so excited about season 2. I cannot wait. Darth Cadus writes, Is it suspicious that The Rise of Skywalker on Rotten Tomatoes has not budged from precisely 86% from under 5,000 reviews to now currently over 38,000 reviews? No. I've seen somebody say that's idiotic. No, because let me bring this up here. Let me bring this up. I have done many of these question of the day polls, right? I've done many of these. Now, these have point percentages as well. Like this is 58.5, 41.5. It's got points. The other one doesn't. But I have on this show, and you guys have seen episodes where this has happened, where it's like we look at it and okay, we've got 1,000 of you guys have voted so far, right? And it'd be like 63% of you say yes to whatever the question is, right? And then later on in the show, we would go back to it, and now there would be 4,000 votes, so 4 times the amount of votes, and it would still be 64% or 63%, whatever it was when it was just 1,000 votes. So basically, once you get over say 200 or 300 votes, you start to get a picture then of what the ratio is. And once you collect 2,000 votes, and you get a ratio, it's roughly going to be that exact same ratio once you get to 2 million votes. Because you get enough votes there to start to paint the picture of what the ratio is of the people who liked it versus the people who didn't like it. Now, on Twitter here, we have points. So it's 58.5 versus 41.5. I think when we looked at this earlier and there was 2,000 votes, I think it was 58 point something else and 41 point something else, but it was basically 58 to 41. And again, we've seen it on my show many times where we've gone from 500 voters and it's a certain percentage, and then we look on it later and there's 3,000 voters and it's still the exact same percentage, because once you start to get a picture of the ratio, that ratio is roughly going to stay exactly the same. We've seen it on my show, so we're going to see it there too. So no, what it is once again a desperate, pathetic attempt for those of you who don't realize, there's this desperate, pathetic attempt out there. Now, and listen, I don't like The Rise of Skywalker. I don't like this movie. But 86% of the audience does. And so now whenever people who have an agenda see facts that they don't like, they start to make up crazy conspiracy theories. And it's really idiotic. I mean, it is absolute bottom of the barrel idiocy. So now the new thing is, I'm seeing other people out there, Disney paid Rotten Tomatoes to keep that at 86%. Oh God, shut up. Shut up. You're just making yourself look idiotic. Because when the critics liked a movie, they paid the critics to like it. Well, now that the critics don't like it as much, and they're seeing the audience do, okay, they're not paying the critics now. Now they're paying Rotten Tomatoes. It's so fucking idiotic that it's hard for me to believe there are people that stupid. And I don't like this movie. I'm one of the people who don't like it. But listen, it is, again, the height of mental weakness. It is the sign of mentally weak people who try to make excuses for the fact that other people don't have the same opinion as them. I don't like The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm perfectly comfortable that 86% of the people who are registering their votes do. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. That doesn't undermine my opinion. That doesn't make my opinion any weaker or any less legitimate. I don't like The Rise of Skywalker, and it doesn't matter if 100% of other people like it or if 0% of the other people like it. It doesn't change the validity of my personal opinion. But there are mentally weak people who go, oh no, there are people who don't think the same as me. I need to come up with some kind of conspiracy theory as to why that is. So instead of just accepting that other people think differently, they come up with these radically ridiculous, stupid, idiotic, bottom of the barrel moronacy that, I just made up a word, by the way, moronacy of, well, then Disney must be paying Rotten Tomatoes to do that. Oh, just shut up. You're making yourself look so idiotic. You're making yourself look so stupid. Just stop. Just stop. Please, just stop. Anyway, let's move on here. Anonymous writes, hey, John, I am listening to you talking about how Kennedy gave too much freedom to Abrams and Johnson. Isn't that a contradiction to all the drama surrounding the non-episodic Star Wars movies? Favorites, maybe experience made her change her approach. No, see, what the problem is that with the individual movies, right? With the individual films, which you're not trying to do a franchise around, but you need to make sure you're on the same page as your directors, right? As far as what you want your directors to do. But once your directors start doing something different than what you agreed to, then you got to step in. In the example of Lord and Miller with the Star Wars, with the Solo movie, right? The Lord and Miller said they were going to make a certain movie, which Lawrence Kasdan, Kathleen Kennedy all signed off on. But then as it turned out, they started making a radically different movie than what they said they were going to make. So Kathy Kennedy, and I agree with her decision. She stepped in and took them off the movie because they went off the rails. And I love Lord and Miller, but they started making a movie and it wasn't their money to spend. They started making a movie that was different than the one that they agreed to do. In making a trilogy, Kathy Kennedy has got to start from a position of not just liking the individual movie that her director is going to make and being on the same page with them. She needed to sit down and map out with them what was going to be the starting point of our movie and what was going to be the ending point of the final movie, and everything had to fall within them. Instead, she approached it on a film-by-film basis. That is what a producer does, but it's not what a studio head should do when making a trilogy. So, yeah, it's one thing when approaching a standalone movie. It's another thing when you can't approach a trilogy as just 3 individual standalone movies. You have to act like a studio head and map out where you want it to go for some consistency. So I believe you got to approach them both a little bit differently. I think you got to approach them all a bit differently. Let's see. Simon writes, after seeing The Rise of Skywalker, I hope when I get to at least 90 that I will never ever look like Emperor Palpatine. Well, we'll remember, Emperor Palpatine's also been diminished by the dark side of the Force. It decays his flesh and all that kind of stuff. So give him that. All right, Simon, I hope when I hit 90, I look more like The Witcher does. All right, Simon writes. Oh, that was Simon. All right, Tone W writes. John, is Terrio the problem? All 3 of the blockbusters he has been involved in have been divisive at best. Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, and The Rise of Skywalker. Does the Ben scene remind you of the Martha scene in BVS? Well, again, I'm not going to talk about the Ben scene because I can't go into spoilers. I don't think so, because you have to look at all the drama that went into those movies, right? You have to look at all the drama and who the filmmakers are and all that kind of stuff. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that Chris Terrio had an Academy Award on his mantle and a movie, not just an Academy Award for himself, but also, by the way, let me just get the year here. Let me get the year here. Okay, it was 2012. If it wasn't for the fact that he wrote a movie that won the Best Picture of the Year at the Academy Awards, and he was working with a good director who knew how to take his material and do it a certain way, and he himself won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay and all that kind of stuff, that's one thing. But when you look at all 3 of the following movies, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, and Star Wars Episode 9, there are worlds of other circumstances that are beating down on each one of those projects. From the drama of Star Wars Episode 9 being a complete change of gear again from the Last Jedi, and then making a decision to try to retcon all the things from The Last Jedi and blah, 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 and all that kind of nonsense. Justice League with them kicking out Zack Snyder, bringing in Joss Whedon, reshooting a whole bunch of these things. You can't just say, much like, why am I freezing on this one writer's name? Sorkin. Like Sorkin writing, one of his movies, that's just him wrote a movie, director came in, directed that movie, made the movie, and you can interpret it like that. All 3 of those other movies, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, the Star Wars thing, have massive amount of extenuating circumstances that have all had massive effects on the films themselves. So I certainly give Chris Terrio no credit for those 3 movies because of all those extenuating circumstances, but I'm also not going to heap a lot of the blame on him. Clearly, he is a world-class screenwriter. He won an Academy Award for screenwriting. A movie he wrote won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. He's clearly really good. But I give him no additional credit for those movies, but I'm also not going to give him a lot of additional blame. We need to see a couple more movies from him that he just writes that are outside of, an existing franchise that already has tons of drama surrounding it. You know what I mean? So that's my personal look at Chris Terrio. All right. The Nerd Errant writes, but in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with I. Since the writings of that's from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Since the writings of the New Testament were in ancient Greek, when anyone claims it's wrong to write Xmas, but say in the Greek alphabet, Christ begins with an X. Yes, but a lot of the New Testament wasn't originally written in Greek as well. There's other languages as well, but anyway, there's something to that as well. But yes, I think that's where Xmas got its originated from. I think that's where actually the term got originated from in the first place. So you're absolutely right to point that out, Nerd Aaron. All right, the Milo writes. First time super chat. Thank you so much, Milo, for writing in. Do you think it would have been better if instead of The Last Jedi, they made Rise of Skywalker into 2 movies? No, not necessarily. I think we talked about this on the spoiler discussion as well. My personal feeling is this was a movie that could have benefited from another 15 minutes being added onto it. I think there's some benefit there. Did it need another entire movie? I don't think so. Now, I said a little bit earlier, it kind of feels like we were missing an episode in between. Yeah, it did, but you could have overcome that with 10 minutes of extra footage in this movie to kind of ease that out. I don't think you need an entire movie. And by the way, I didn't like The Rise of Skywalker, but one of the things that I do think worked in the film was its pacing. I thought it had a terrific kinetic pace to it. I really do. I thought the pace to it served the movie. But to iron out some of those little things, like it felt like we missed an episode in coming to this movie, and some of the things that other people said that wasn't explained or fleshed out at all, and blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of that could have been handled very effectively in just 15 extra minutes of footage. Because you don't need a lot of screen time to explain some pretty deep stuff. And so another entire movie, I don't think so. But another 10, 15, maybe even pushing 20 extra minutes, which would have kept it under 3 hours. I think it could have benefited from that. So I'm going to go with an extra 15 minutes rather than needing another entire movie. All right, Josh Bing writes, sorry about the spoiler question. No problem. I know you didn't do it intentionally. I know it wasn't on purpose. Sorry about the spoiler question, John. I thought that since we had the spoiler discussion yesterday, we were good to talk. No. See, that's the thing. We had a spoiler discussion in a video titled Spoiler Discussion so that anybody who watched that video knew that there were spoilers in there. That doesn't open up the rest of the John Campea Show to just spoil. No. The spoiler discussion, because people know that's spoilers. Here, we need to protect our fellow film fans from spoilers as much as we can. So unless the label spoilers is on it, or unless the movie's already been out for 9 months, we don't go into spoilers here too much. Anyway, that we were going to ask them in normal episodes. No. Can you address the question in another spoiler talk video? Well, I don't think we're going to have another spoiler talk video, to be honest with you, Josh. And I can't even remember what I can't remember what the question was now. But the chances are, Josh, if you go, and I know it's long, but if you go back and look at the spoiler discussion that we've already done, I guarantee you, even though I can't remember what your question was, I guarantee you it got addressed. I guarantee it got addressed. The topic got addressed because we covered, for all the, our viewers are so smart. They sent in all the right questions. We addressed everything that possibly could have been sent in. So yeah, I would go back and check that out. I'm sure you'll find your topic got addressed. All right. An anonymous viewer writes in, "Hey, John, the Mortal Kombat movie getting pushed from March 2021 to January 15th, 2021. Should we be worried this is a lack of confidence in the film, or the opposite? January isn't a typical month for big budget films." We were just talking about how January has been used as a dumping ground, but it doesn't automatically mean it's being used as a dumping ground. It very well could just be a simple matter of, you know what? We're looking at the competition around when our movie's opening in March. We think we stand a better chance of being more successful in this month instead of that month. I mean, so I wouldn't necessarily look at that change as a positive or a negative. And by the way, it's not like the movie was only 2 months away and then had a change of date. This is a movie that's still well over a year away. And they made a slight change in its release. I think it probably has more to do with marketing, a marketing decision than anything else. I don't know that for a fact. So I would say if you're looking forward to that Mortal Kombat movie, I wouldn't look at this as any sort of a worrying sign. Not yet. I wouldn't look at this as either a good or a bad thing. I think it's probably just a matter of, you know what? We're looking at the competition. We look at what's opening around it. We're trying to look at what type of a marketing strategy we could have. And we've reassessed, and the movie's still over a year away. And we just kind of think January would be the better date for us. I honestly think that's probably it. Now, as we get closer, it may turn out that there are reasons to worry. But as of right now, I would say don't worry about it. I would say right now it's totally fine. At least that's how I look at it at this point. We'll know more a little under a year from now, then we'll see where we're at. All right, final question of the day comes into us from Samuel, who writes, heard you mention Aaron Sorkin and my ears perked up. He's one of the best in the business, if not the best in the business. Aaron Sorkin is a remarkable screenwriter. Now, you don't have to love all of his stuff, but you can't deny the structure in which and the process he has in the way he tells his stories are remarkable. And he's a lot like, in a way, like a Quentin Tarantino and a Kevin Smith in that he's very strong at dialogue. Aaron Sorkin is so strong at dialogue. Like, honestly, Tarantino, Kevin Smith, and Sorkin are probably the best at pure writing dialogue. They're fantastic. And he's remarkable. He's fantastic. And I love that dude's writing. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, guys, tomorrow, even though it's Christmas Eve, we do have, where are we there? We do have another episode. We are going to have a John Campea Show tomorrow, special Christmas Eve edition. Me and Robert Meyer Burnett will be here. I hope you guys are going to be able to join us as well. Guys, thank you to Robert Meyer Burnett for being on the show. It's always great having him here. And thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions, not just because you asked and gave us great fun things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel while you were doing that. And all of us here are very, very grateful for that. So thank you so much for that. Don't forget, guys, you can use the tip link below to start sending your questions for tomorrow's show now. You don't even have to wait for the live event to be posted. You can start sending those questions now if you so choose. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thank you so much for being here and being part of this day. My name is John Campea, and until next time, guys, bye-bye.